Events begin to take place in a city at night, where the lights are shining brightly and a large number of cars are driving. There was a young man driving in the car who was very sad and was thinking that he didn't want to give people a lift at night, but just wanted to return home, wash and go to bed. Suddenly, a girl came out onto the roadway, and the hero started shouting at her with all his might to be careful when crossing the road. The agitated lady began to panic and immediately took out a knife to protect herself. At that moment, the girl began to climb into the car, and the young man shouted at her, because he did not understand why she suddenly ran out onto the road, and it was very dangerous. This girl was not easy, and she presented a knife directly to the throat of the main character, and told him to go to Zhonglua immediately. Because the stranger behaved this way, and the guy even had to drive through a red light and break the law. The driving speed was simply incredible, since the young man's life was in danger, and he did not know how to escape. The impudent girl even ordered the guy to give up his phone, but he began to refuse, because his phone was old and useless. This answer made the girl even angrier, because she didn't care what phone he had, and she still ordered him to give it back. As soon as the stranger had the phone, she immediately started calling somewhere. It turned out that she called the police and said that her name was Lu Mei, she was studying at Zijing School, and her friend was kidnapped. Hearing this, the young man immediately realized that the stranger was threatening him simply so that he could quickly get to Zhonglua, although because of this he almost wet his pants. Feeling ashamed of what happened, Lu Mei began to claim that the driver had just heard all the information about her, and she would pay compensation for tonight tomorrow after school. Her younger sister was kidnapped. She managed to send her a distress signal while the kidnapper did not see it. The determined hero smiled and exclaimed that saving people is a good thing, and helping beautiful girls is the basis of happiness, which is why he will do this. In order to get to the scene as quickly as possible, the driver began to drive even faster, and now felt even more enthusiastic. Driving too fast made Lu Mei feel unwell, so they stopped to make her feel a little better. Unfortunately, the girl had absolutely no time, and she needed to run, and she also asked not to forget the driver to come to school tomorrow. Looking at this girl, the young man realized that she was really quite strange, as if there was something wrong with her. Meanwhile, another stranger came up and asked the handsome guy if he wanted to have fun, but he immediately refused. Turning around, at the last moment the girl said that in this case he could return here tomorrow and would easily find her here. At that moment, Lu Mei was just looking for her sister named Vivi, and was panicking because she still had not found her. While examining the abandoned building, the girl still managed to find her sister, who was tied up and completely unable to move. Moving closer to her little sister, Lu Mei was grateful to God that she had finally found her and immediately wanted to free her. Suddenly, someone nearby began to clap, and watched as the loving sister rushed alone into the abandoned factory. There were a huge number of criminals, and they all looked quite menacing. The main villain exclaimed that since the girl came here, she would never leave here again. Looking at these scoundrels, the girl immediately realized that it was a trap. A lot of grown men immediately started pestering the girl, saying that she was really quite beautiful and they would help her relax. There was also another person nearby, but he was completely uninvolved in the attack on the girl. The hooligans immediately noticed another guy and immediately decided to find out who he was. Starting to twist his knife, the young man introduced himself and said that he was the driver of that girl, and she forgot something in his taxi, and he came to give it to her. The excited girl did not understand why the driver came here, and ordered him to quickly run away from here, because it was very dangerous here. The impudent bandits began to laugh and shouted that now there would be another dead man, after which the boss ordered the taxi driver to be killed. The red-haired criminal began to swing with a crowbar in order to strike the main character. Attacking with all his might, the impudent man thought that he could now easily beat the skinny guy. As soon as the man approached the young man, he discovered that the taxi driver was nowhere to be found, as if he had disappeared. In fact, the smart guy was able to jump onto the container and began to mock the villain who was about to attack him. The main character had incredible and impressive parkour skills, which is why he could easily escape from such an awkward bandit. Looking at the criminals who were trying to attack him, the hero realized that a lot of time had passed since the last time he moved so quickly, but still he could not allow himself to relax. The boss noticed the impudent driver and wanted to ask him why he prevented him from attacking the girl, but the young man only said that he had simply come to the client to return his item. With a wink, the driver told him not to forget to give him 5 stars for service in the app. For Lu Mei, it was truly surprising that this person was trying to joke at such a time. Continuing to listen to the uninvited guest, the bandits decided to deal with him and do everything possible to ensure that he also did not get out of this place. Many armed men began to attack the main character, hoping that they could easily defeat him. Smiling, the boy exclaimed that the beautiful lady would owe him for what he was doing now. Having jumped from the container, the young man prepared for battle, and realized that he needed to defeat his enemies. The first blow was delivered with the help of the head. The guy hit his enemy with all his strength directly in the forehead. The men immediately noticed that something was wrong, since the driver was fighting somehow suspiciously well. Deciding to continue the battle, the boy said that they really attacked the wrong person, and he was much stronger than they thought. The battle continued, and many enemies were defeated. The young man easily defeated them. The boss was watching everything that was happening all this time, and did not understand how it was even possible that 10 people could not cope with one. Having easily defeated absolutely all the enemies, the boy said that now they need to call a doctor, since they are no longer able to move on their own. Looking at her savior, the girl realized that he was truly amazing, and could not believe that he was really a simple taxi driver. At the same time, the bandit boss decided it was time to use his plan B. Taking the pistol out of his pocket, the impudent man immediately presented it to the girl's head and shouted that he now had a hostage, and the guy had no choice but to escape. Hearing such a statement, the young man only smiled, because it seemed funny to him. Experiencing incredible aggression towards the villain, the hero decided to check whether the criminal could really harm Lu Mei. Pointing the gun at the main character, the enemy decided to shoot, and wanted his enemy to finally die. Closing her eyes, the girl did not want to see what could happen to the young man, because she did not want him to die. Determined, he realized that it was necessary to act, and sharply threw the knife at his enemy. The flying knife instantly hit the target, and the bandit began to scream with all his might as he was in great pain. Thus, it turned out that a simple taxi driver could easily win the battle against a criminal gang. Having started to fall, the bandit absolutely could not understand how this was even possible, because it seemed to him that an ordinary person was not capable of something like that. Feeling strong anger towards the guy, the man wanted to do everything to make the stranger lose the battle. The main character at that moment decided to attack again, and threw a plunger in order to pacify his enemy. The flying plunger instantly hit the target, causing the enemy to no longer be able to see properly as his face was covered. Looking at everything that was happening, Lu Mei really realized that the taxi driver was too good. He was like a knight who descended from heaven on a dragon. This knight was truly the bravest guy in this room, who literally defeated an army of bandits. Watching the main character, the girl even thought that she was hallucinating, since she really saw a knight in the driver. At that same second, someone ran into the room and handcuffed the guy, making him unable to move. It turned out that it was special forces who seized the building and began to free the hostages in order to impede the activities of the bandits. The excited father started calling for his daughter as he was so happy that they had finally found her. Lu Mei and Vivi were also very happy to see their parents, since they had recently been captured by a large number of bandits. The mother and father began to hug the girl and thanked God that she was okay. The captain of the Special Forces team exclaimed that the hostages were safely rescued, and everyone else needed to be tied up, but the hero began to shout that he was an exemplary citizen who brings justice. Suddenly, a man said that there was no need to detain this guy. The muscular man began to warm up and said that all special forces were free, because he would deal with this man on his own. Subordinates immediately began to leave because they agreed with their boss. He began to leave. The soldiers communicated with each other that the captain would personally deal with this guy, and he was really unlucky, since the boss was indeed very strong, and no one could fight against him with dignity. Soon after everyone left, the man began to look at the main character as if he was about to fight him. Laughing, the muscular boss turned to the young man to tell him something. But as it turned out, in fact, the man decided to ask the boss what he was doing here, and the young man answered him that it was nothing special, he was just flexing his muscles. Also, the guy did not forget to remind that a man should also learn to be vigilant on time and act carefully, as well as do his job well. Having given the handcuffs to his subordinate, the hero said not to call him boss anymore, because he is now a simple taxi driver. A few hours later, events continued to occur late at night in the main character's house. After the shower, the boy looked at the photo and thought about what his current mission was. Thinking about everything that happened, he concluded that he transferred to Zijin, and now he will finish school with flying colors, and will also enroll in higher education to get a bachelor's degree, and he will definitely do this. The next morning, the event continued to take place at Zijin School. The teacher asked his students to greet their new classmate, because now he would be studying in their class. As it turned out, this was the same guy named Lo Feng, who just yesterday was a taxi driver and defeated more than 10 rivals. Classmates immediately noticed this handsome guy and realized that they wanted to date him, and Odnoklasniki realized that another narcissistic rooster had come to them. It was at that moment that the two girls realized that the same guy who had saved them from bandits yesterday had come to their class. Several classmates were very angry, and wanted to play a trick on Luo Feng so that he would no longer be so arrogant. One of the impudent people realized that it would be a good idea to trip up his new classmate. The arrogant scoundrel wanted the newcomer to trip and fall on his face, because perhaps then he would not be a freak. But the main character was much smarter than this scoundrel, and with all his might he stepped right on the foot of his new classmate. The impudent guy immediately paid for his action and began screaming in pain, as his leg was now incredibly painful. The teacher did not immediately understand what was going on, and asked his student what happened, but he only replied that everything was fine. The classmate who was sitting next door decided to tell Luo Feng that it was better for him not to get involved with Liao Qian immediately after he entered. The young man didn't understand why he shouldn't do this, but a classmate explained that although this guy is not particularly strong, the Heavenly League behind him is surprising. Many pay them not to touch them, because they were the school Yakuza. Hearing that these scoundrels were collecting protection money, the young man immediately realized that they were probably rich. After the lesson was over, things started to change, and events continued to happen during the break. In order to effectively start learning, Lo Feng even started reading books during breaks, because he wanted to be much smarter than others. Suddenly, someone decided to kick the desk with all their might to draw attention to themselves. It was the same Liao Qian, and he came along with his friend, shouting that probably the newcomer is not yet aware of their rules, and now they will explain to him that everyone must pay 2,000 yuan for protection, otherwise the newcomer will become a cripple for life. Classmates immediately began to discuss that the newcomer was facing bullying, and now he would need to pay money because he was being threatened. At the same time, another classmate realized that the fee was only 1,000 yuan, but for some reason the price was doubled for Luo Feng. The bandit didn't care at all about this, and he decided to explain to his classmate that the newcomer had stepped on his foot, and therefore he had to pay for the medicine, and next time, the guy had better keep his mouth shut. Seeing what was happening here, Lu Mei decided to come up and ask Liao Qian what he was up to, and why he had staged a farce in front of the new guy, but the bandit absolutely could not understand why the princess was meddling in his affairs. This caused even more concern among Odnoklasniki, because now they realized that Lu Mei and Vivi herself care about the newcomer, and perhaps they really know each other. The main character decided to laugh at the antics of the bandits, and said that they are probably stupid, because power is in knowledge, and they will understand this when they read the book more. Such a statement only made the scoundrel laugh, and he could not believe that Luo Feng told him this, and since he did not want to pay the money, they were going to beat him. The impudent Odnoklasniki immediately began to swing at the newcomer in order to show their true strength and so that he would begin to be afraid of them. Closing his book, the young man exclaimed that he had previously said that knowledge is power. That is why Luo Feng decided to show his true abilities and hit the two scoundrels with one book. Now the classmates began to worry even more, because they realized that the newcomer dared to fight the Heavenly League itself, and now he would not live. In fact, the main character tried to enlighten and teach them, and they now owe payment for his efforts. The heroes also understood that as soon as the hooligans walked out the door, they would immediately run to their boss like mongrels to tell them what had happened. In this regard, he ordered a message to be sent to the boss so that after school he would come to him to pay for his protection. Luo Feng insisted that the bullies must definitely convey this message, otherwise they themselves will understand what will happen to them. Watching everything that was happening, the classmates were really shocked. After all, they were surprised that the newcomer wanted to collect protection fees from the Heavenly League, as if he were unbalanced. The protagonist's desk neighbor was also shocked, because he didn't understand whether this dude was really going to do something like that. Even Vivi and Lu Mei were simply incredibly surprised, because they wanted to take the initiative, and then this guy decided to stand up for himself. Meanwhile, the teacher came and didn't understand why the hooligans were sitting on the floor, and Luo Feng was sitting on a chair in front of them. The English lesson began, and the teacher ordered all the students to sit down to continue the lesson. At that moment, the hooligans were holding their cheeks and experiencing severe pain, while simultaneously saying that Luo Feng was simply very lucky. This answer really struck the young man because he did not expect that the hooligans would really be so impudent. At the same time, the teacher noticed that there was a new student in the class, and she decided to reintroduce herself, then saying that she was an English teacher named Jun Bian. Today they will look at the use of prepositions in English. While sitting in class, the boy noticed that English was really very boring, and even began to yawn. Turning to the class, the teacher decided to ask a question in order to involve the students in the lesson process. All classmates did not want to answer questions in English at all, because they were incapable of doing this. They were very scared. But as it turned out, at that moment the main character had already completely fallen asleep, which is why he even began to snore. The woman immediately noticed that this guy dared to sleep in class, and his classmates realized that now he was in trouble, and he would answer questions. The bullies were also glad that the newcomer had made a mistake and now had to suffer from the teacher. The woman came closer to the sleeping student and began to watch him closely. Soon after this, she grabbed the book and hit the young man's hand with all her might. During the blow, the guy managed to dodge, which is why he didn't even suffer from the blow from the book. The moment Luo Feng dodged, he continued to sleep, and his classmate was incredibly surprised because he realized that his desk neighbor was indeed not a person. Indignant even more, the woman began to try with all her might to hit her student, but he kept dodging, and she did not believe that he had been sleeping all this time. Lu Mei watched everything that was happening, and her sister was shocked because it all looked very funny and absurd. The woman soon decided it would be a good idea to kick her student with all the force she had. But the blow missed because the guy managed to dodge in time and was not harmed by the attack. Experiencing severe pain, the woman began to jump on her leg because she could no longer stand normally. The young man finally woke up from the teacher's scream and decided to find out from the woman what had happened. Looking at the teacher, Lo Feng asked her what happened, and the woman at that moment realized that she was now truly humiliated. Starting to get angry, the teacher began to talk to her student in English, and if he could not answer correctly, he would suffer. As it turned out, this was not a problem for the guy, and he easily answered in English, apologizing to the teacher, because last night he did not sleep well. According to the woman, this was not the reason, and if he fell asleep in class again, he would fly out the window and listen to the lesson outside, but Luo Feng liked this option, and he said that he would never be kicked out of the lesson for this reason. The response irritated the teacher even more, and she didn't even know how to respond to something like that. Feeling great shame, the woman realized that Luo Feng had perfect English pronunciation. It was even better than hers. Turning around, the woman said that this time she would forgive the student, but he should learn to manage his time more wisely. The newcomer was really good, and some of his classmates understood this, because he spoke such English that even the teacher could not defeat him. Smiling, the young man thought that he had fought abroad for several years, and for him English was like his native language. The bully began to be indignant, saying that the teacher acted unfairly because he forgave the troublemaker, but the woman did not think so and decided to punish Liao Qian because he spoke in class. Thus, the bully was punished and he was kicked out of the class because he had disrupted the order. Some time later, events continued to occur after the lesson. The students began to leave the classroom for recess in order to get some rest, but some of the students were quite hostile and were going to teach the main character a lesson. Concerned, a classmate realized that the Heavenly League was coming to their class, and decided to warn Luo Feng that his enemies were very evil, and he would not be able to defeat them, which is why it was necessary to run away from the class as soon as possible. At that same second, someone heard his classmate's screams and immediately grabbed him. These were the same scoundrels who were the school Yakuza, and they came to teach a lesson to the daring newcomer named Lo Feng. Starting to laugh loudly, the main character shouted that he would never have thought in his life that such a serious group would have a dwarf as its boss. The boss, nicknamed the dwarf, was very angry, and exclaimed with an evil grin that Luo Feng would now be punished. The young man was not against the punishment. He said that his classmate should be released first, because he had absolutely nothing to do with everything that was happening. In the boss's opinion, Tang Dai was just helping Luo Feng, and he couldn't just let him go. All Yakuza servants were ordered to fall on the main character in order to force him to lick the boss's shoes. The maddened dwarf was simply a worthless leader who was not even capable of fighting on his own. Having found the weakest boss, the main character decided to attack him, and grabbing him by the neck, ordered him to repeat everything he said earlier, but only in person. Having grabbed the Yakuza boss, Luo Feng told his comrade to come up and beat him in revenge, because Tang Dai had previously told him that this scoundrel had constantly bullied him. This was really necessary, because if Tang Dai wants to become a real man, then he needs to do this, or he will remain a useless coward for the rest of his life. Hearing these words, the cowardly Odnoklasnian remembered exactly how this scoundrel mocked him. Such actions on the part of the Yakuza boss greatly offended Tang Dai, and he really wanted revenge for what was done to him. Starting to swing his fist, the guy shouted with all his might that he didn't want to be a coward, and didn't want to be bullied all his life, but wanted to become a real man. Tang Dai dealt many blows to his offender, and shouted that he would never be able to intimidate him again in his life. These events were indeed shocking to all of his classmates, as no one could have expected the cowardly Tang Dai to be capable of such a thing. Thus, thanks to the short fight, Tang Dai was simply happy, and told his brother that if he was the boss, he would always follow him. Pointing his finger at his new comrade, Luo Feng exclaimed that Tan should not talk nonsense, and if the wards want to take revenge on the guy who beat up their boss, then he is very close. Shameless but the smart guy, meanwhile, decided to approach the Yakuza boss, and said that he was offering him a good deal, and he had to pay for protection, or he would throw him out the window. Soon after the incident, the boss began shouting to his wards to quickly bring him money, because he was captured by a crazy guy who is capable of much. Starting to cry, the bandit said that all the money had been refunded, and Lo Feng asked his comrade to give all the money to Odnoklasniki, who were paying for their protection. Also, the young man could not leave the Yakuza boss unpunished, and began to drag him straight to the window in order to finish the battle that had begun. The Yakuza boss began to fly down from the window, and at the same time shouted very loudly, thus, he got what he deserved. Looking at the flight of this scoundrel, the young man at that moment hoped that the Yakuza boss would still be able to survive. In panic, all the classmates began to run away, because they thought that Luo Feng was a murderer. After all, he had already killed Huang Lauda. Tang Dai also began to panic, and asked his brother why he did this, because now part of the blame would be on him, but the young man did not panic, and said that the bandit had not died at all. This news made his classmate happy, and he decided to look through the window to see what happened to the bandit. It turned out that in fact the villain was thrown straight into a trash can, and suffered only from the fact that the place where he fell was very stinking. Turning to his comrade, the hero exclaimed that now no one would dare to take revenge on him. As several hours passed, events continued to occur near the school gates. Looking around, the young man discovered strange people who wanted to talk to him. These were men in suits, and they were looking for Luo Feng so that he could go with them and talk to the boss, who had been waiting for him for quite a long time. The agents ordered the guy to get inside the car in order to go to the place where their boss was. After which, the main character and the men began to go somewhere. The man in the suit decided to ask the young man if he knew who he was, and Luo Feng immediately replied that Zheng Vivi's father, Zheng Gatian, was sitting in front of him now, and he was a famous entrepreneur and philanthropist. The boy immediately assumed that they probably wanted to thank him for saving his daughter, and he was not so greedy, and asked for only 1,000,000 yuan, because that would be enough. But after such a statement, the man looked angrily at the young man and asked whether he was specifically pursuing his daughter. After all, it was really suspicious, because when Vivi was kidnapped, the guy was an ordinary taxi driver and happened to be nearby, but today he has already turned into a high school senior, but according to the hero, it was just a coincidence. Perhaps it really was fate, and Boss Zheng had better think about the fact that he could become his son-in-law, and then they would not have to pay anything, and he would simply share dozens of assets with them. These words made the man even more angry, and he asked if the guy really thought he was joking. In this case, the hero could not understand at all why he should admit to something he did not do, as if he were considered an idiot. Feeling very angry, the man shouted that he would call the police. The young man could not stand such behavior on the part of his interlocutor, and with all his strength he kicked him in the stomach. At that same second, a collision occurred and the truck drove into the car they were driving. A serious accident occurred, resulting in a huge explosion, but fortunately, Luo Feng and Zheng were still able to escape. Looking at the exploded car, no one could believe that this really happened. The boss immediately felt that he had been saved, but did not understand what had happened, and only saw that something had exploded there, and they urgently needed to leave here and also call an ambulance. Zheng's wards immediately started running towards him to see if he was okay. There really was no one in the truck, and the guy immediately noticed this, after which he decided to find out if Zheng really thought that this was also built. The worried old man argued that Luo Feng could in no way know that he was waiting for him, and that he would go exactly this way, and someone really wanted to kill him for a long time, and these people must have been connected with the kidnapping of his daughter. After laughing, the boy began to leave and said that they should forget about it, because a good person is often misunderstood. This is already a common thing for him, and they should investigate this case, and he will go home. Starting to shout loudly, the boss ordered to strengthen security for his wife and investigate this case, because he was going to find out who did it and skin him. The boss also ordered to take him to the hospital, because the guy who saved him seems to have broken his ribs. A few hours later, the event continued to occur on the street in a night restaurant. Looking at the restaurant menu, the young man realized that even on the street the prices were very expensive. The friendly waitress came closer to the guy and decided to ask what he wanted to order. He replied that he wanted to eat a plate of ramen with egg noodles. Preparing to eat food, Lo Feng only thought that he was very poor, and the money from work was barely enough to pay for his studies, and there was almost nothing left for food. Sighing heavily, he realized that for a long time he could not find an apartment at a suitable price to rent. Suddenly, someone started shouting that a cockroach was found in the soup, and the dissatisfied visitor immediately started calling the waiter. The evil men began to behave aggressively, and shouted at the waitress, because they saw a cockroach in their souper, and ordered them to pay them compensation. The alarmed waitress did not understand what the men were talking about, and they, in turn, continued to behave aggressively and said that now the girl owed them 20,000 yuan. Or the impudent visitor had another way in which they could agree without paying. Blushing a little, the impudent one noticed that the waitress was a rather beautiful woman, and offered to spend the night with them, and then they would forgive her. These words made the girl even more nervous, and she realized that the scoundrels had started this on purpose, and she even wanted to call the police. This answer did not suit the visitors at all, and they overturned the table, ordering the girl to shut up. The hooligans could not understand how the girl allowed herself to accuse them of lying, because they had previously said that they ate soup with a cockroach, and if they said so, then it cannot be a lie. Watching the ongoing conflict, the visitors also began to panic, since the hooligans belonged to a gang of black foxes, and they were the bosses of the area. The gang member came closer to the waitress and said that if she could prove that there was no cockroach there, then they would leave, otherwise she would have to pay with money or with her body. The young man nevertheless decided to stand up for the girl, and said that it was easy to check, and the guy just needed to spit out everything he ate. Hearing a rather strange answer, the man immediately wanted to know where this sucker came from who dared to answer him like that. Starting to stretch his hands, the main character exclaimed that he simply proposed a solution, and they should check whether the man was telling the truth. Blushing with shame, the scoundrel shouted that he didn't care that they were disturbing the guy, and he was just a stupid child. The scoundrel didn't understand at all how he could spit out what he had already eaten. The behavior on the part of the man was disgusting, and the guy really didn't like it, which is why he threw a piece of paper at him. Hitting the impudent man with all his might, Lo Feng shouted that it would really be very easy to check, and now they would find out what exactly the scoundrel ate. Having received such a strong blow, the man immediately felt ill, and he actually began to spit out everything he had eaten. Although the young men had poor eyesight, the bully's older brother could take a better look. Are there cockroaches in what this man just spat out? Looking at everything that happened, even the visitors realized that Luo Feng was really crazy, because he was not afraid to get involved with a gang of black foxes. Another gang member grabbed a chair and began trying to attack the stranger since he dared to contact them. Not far from the guy lay a bottle, which he immediately decided to use in a fight. Luo Feng kicked the bottle and used it to make the attacking man fall. This strategy indeed turned out to be effective, since the second member of the gang also fell not far from the already beaten scoundrel. The main character ordered the enemy not to get up and watch how his friend decided to help him look for the cockroach. Although the young man acted quite cruelly with these scoundrels, it was fair, and all the people who watched the fight understood this. For every resident of this city, Luo Feng's act was impressive, because before no one had dared to resist such an influential gang. Meanwhile, the bandits had already begun to run away, and finally shouted that they would return to take revenge. The grateful waitress began to say that she was really very grateful to the guy for saving her. Luo Feng then said that he did not need gratitude, and these bandits were just annoying him. And the friendly girl asked her brother to take at least some money, and also said that he might not even pay for his order. Although the guy could use some money, he still said that he doesn't need to be rewarded for good deeds, otherwise he won't be different from those guys. It was then that the rescued girl said that she would not talk about money, since such a hero as his brother did not need it. Coming closer to the post with advertisements, the young man noticed that there was an apartment for rent nearby. The waitress immediately saw this and said that this was her advertisement, and this morning the girl just stopped renting her apartment. Having led the guy into a rented apartment, the waitress began to tell him that two girls used to live here, but today they moved out, and Luo Feng could just settle down in this house. The girl also said that her savior may not pay for the overnight stay today. Her husband is responsible for the rent, but he works the night shift, so they will agree on the price tomorrow. After which, the sister said that she was glad to meet you and was about to leave, saying that if the young man needed anything, he could call her. Sitting down on the bed, the boy thought that as long as he stayed here, if the gang returned, he could take care of them. Hearing an unpleasant odor from his body, Law decided that he needed to take a bath first, because walking around sweating was simply disgusting. Having taken off his clothes, the hero immediately climbed into the bath to wash himself. Meanwhile, someone nearby had already arrived in a car and was gradually heading towards the house where Luo Feng lived. It was a girl who looked quite good, and was wearing a beautiful dress. The tired girl thought that she would never go to such boring parties again. When she started to open the door, the girl didn't even suspect that there was someone else in the apartment. First, the stranger began to unbutton her dress, because she felt that she smelled bad, because there was an unpleasant smell of smoke in the place where she was. As soon as the lady undressed, she immediately entered the bath to take a shower, but there she discovered an uninvited guest. Having started to get angry, the girl simply did not understand how to react, since there was some guy in her soul. Addressing the girl in English, Lu Mei greeted his teacher and wished her a good evening. Closing the door to the bathroom, the teacher could not believe that there was a student in her soul. Having called the owner of the house, the woman immediately expressed her dissatisfaction, but the owner only replied that she did not know that only one girl had moved out, because her husband did not talk about it. Soon after everything happened, the main character and his teacher were sitting at a distance from each other, and were very embarrassed. The polite guy asked the woman not to worry, because his sister didn't know the whole situation, and as long as he didn't bring his things, he could leave and wouldn't tell anyone about what he saw. Bowing her head, the woman exclaimed that the student could stay here. The guy immediately reacted and bent over the girl's knees, shouting that he was very grateful to the teacher for not leaving him to spend the night on the street. Feeling even more embarrassed, Teacher June said that Luo Feng could really stay here, but he had to promise her one thing, and if he didn't do it, she wouldn't forgive him. The conditions were that the student would have to take part in the National English Oral Competition in a month's time. And in any case, in order to avoid suspicion and sidelong glances, they must keep secret that they have a teacher-student relationship, but it was completely unclear how they could explain that they lived together. After which, the owner of the apartment came, and the teacher said that her cousin had arrived and they were relatives. This was indeed good news for the woman, because she would have been very nervous if they turned out to be strangers to each other, and decided to invite them to her restaurant tomorrow because she wanted to treat them to dinner. Starting to laugh, the young man said that in this case they would see each other tomorrow, and his sister had nothing to worry about. Thus, the two of them managed to get out of this difficult situation, and they would also be fed for free, and they happily accepted this offer instead of spending money. Meanwhile, events continued to happen in the expensive mansion. A guy belonging to the group shouted that his brother should stand up for him, because he had not been humiliated like that since childhood, and this would clearly damage the reputation of their Huang family. In the brother's opinion, it was simply impossible, because some poor man Tang Dai and some new guy were beaten and thrown into the trash by Liao Qianum. Still, the brother needed to believe it, since Liao told everything in detail, and now the guy wanted to take revenge on the offenders. At school, the sisters talked to each other and said that they should talk to Luo Feng. According to the girls, the young man is really very handsome, and they should definitely go together, since Vivi will be uncomfortable when she is alone. One of the sisters nevertheless decided to approach the young man in order to talk to him. The slightly worried girl said that she wanted to invite Luo Feng to her birthday party next week. Nodding politely, the hero said that he thanks for the invitation and will definitely come. This news really made my sister happy, and she also said that her dad would also like him to come, because she wants to thank him personally. Classmates immediately heard this and began to discuss that Vivi invited newcomer Luo Feng to her birthday, and everyone present would like to be in his place. Suddenly, the bully exclaimed that Director Huang ordered Luo Feng to come to him, and his petty henchman named Tang Dai was already waiting in the office. After such a strange invitation, the young man nevertheless headed to the director's office. Looking at the disciple, the man immediately asked, "Is this guy really not Luo Feng?" Seeing his friend, the boy immediately decided to find out why Tang Dai was standing in such a strange position, as if he was grimacing. Hitting the table with all his might, the director asked again whether the student who had come was really Luo Feng. Coming closer to the director, the young man introduced himself, saying that his name was indeed Luo Feng. So the director saw what this student looked like and took out a document about the school punishments for him and Tang Dai. Now everyone will need to write a 5,000-word explanatory note, and then personally apologize to Huang Laud. Hearing about the punishment, the hero immediately realized that the director's surname Huang was the same as Huang Lauda, as if they were related. This question made the man angry, because he did not understand what the student was hinting at, since yesterday he forcibly threw the student out the window. Fortunately he ended up in the trash, and survived. If his uncle Zheng Gaitian had not vouched for him, he would have been killed long ago. Excluded. After thinking for a while, Luo Feng could not believe that Zheng Gaitian included him among his relatives, and he probably realized that there might be problems with the director. Realizing that there was no point in talking to the director anymore, the young man called his friend and told the director that he could talk to his uncle about what happened. After leaving the office, Tang Dai told his comrade that he really correctly assumed that Director Doyang is related to Huang Laud, because he is his fourth uncle, and they probably want revenge. Looking at his friend, the young man noticed that every time he mentioned someone from the Huang family, he became noticeably angry, as if he had some kind of grudge against them, and as it turned out, this was indeed the case. Tang also decided to say that Zheng Gaitian is really amazing compared to the Huang family. After all, they are trash in society. This made the boy feel satisfied as he was almost related to Zheng Gaitian. The hooligans were watching the main character and his comrade all this time, and did not understand how they managed to survive. As several hours passed, events continued to occur after school. The comrades decided to invite Luo Feng to dinner, because he cooked very tasty, and the hero happily agreed, because he never refused free food. Suddenly, someone came closer to the two friends and started laughing, saying that they were freaks. It was the same scoundrel who had been beaten earlier, and he told Luo Feng and Tang Dai that they would die today, because his elder brother Huang Ma Chen had come and would now take revenge for the humiliation. Looking at everything that was happening, the hero could not understand what was wrong with this family, and why they always want to take revenge, but Tang Dai was ready for a fight. The guy with big ears felt extreme anger towards this family, since the father and sons were to blame for the death of his mother, and he also broke his father's leg. This story made the scoundrel laugh, because in his opinion, Tang Dai's father and mother were useless, and they should have known who they were messing with. With all his might, the young man clenched his teeth and continued to watch the insolent man who laughed at the death of his mother. Looking at his friend, the young man decided to calm him down, because it was clear that he was very angry. The main character still decided to ask the insolent people what they wanted to achieve, but the humiliated guy from the Huang family said that today they would see it for themselves. The vile scoundrel exclaimed that first his brother Ma Chen would break Tang Dai's leg, so that he would remain crippled for life. Sneaking up to the impudent guy, the young man grabbed him by the neck and decided to ask him again what he just said. The bandits' henchmen immediately grabbed their weapons and were about to attack Luo Feng, because he had captured their boss. One of the gang members ran with a baseball bat and was about to hit the young man who dared to attack first. But it turned out that the Huang family's ally would miss during the strike, and thus he hit his boss directly on the back with a baseball bat. Seeing that the enemy was disoriented, Law immediately began to act, and the ISO hit him directly in the face with all his strength. The loser immediately fell to the floor because he could not withstand such a strong blow. Family eldest brother Huang immediately realized that his opponent was indeed quite good, and had impressive strength. As the bandit started to run towards Lo Feng, he thought that now he could easily beat this guy. According to the elder brother, no one in the world is opposed to his strike called the First World Strike. The worried comrade began to shout to brother Feng to be careful, because now he could be hit. Suddenly, the enemy stopped and did not hit the young man directly in the face. The blow was stopped for a reason. In fact, Luo Feng carried out a super-fast counter-attack, thanks to which the enemy was simply discouraged. Thus, all the bandits realized that even Huang's elder brother Ma Chen had been defeated, and he was not a serious rival for Luo Feng. Now the main character for the bandits was like a huge devil, who was very scary, and it was simply impossible to defeat him. At the same time, the older brother continued to scream in pain, and could not even get up from the floor. Looking at the defeated enemy, the young man realized that his friends did not even help him. The angry enemy realized that it was necessary to act differently, and took out his knife in order to carry out a hidden attack. Overcoming the pain, the bandit was about to attack Luo Feng using the effect of surprise. But for the young man it was a completely obvious attack, and he easily defended himself against such a stupid opponent. Having caught the knife, the hero realized that it was necessary to teach the enemy a lesson for using such a serious weapon. Because of this, Luo Feng began stabbing multiple times directly at the enemy who was trying to dodge. Feeling extremely afraid, the eldest brother of the Huang family closed his eyes so as not to see how he was attacked. But as soon as he opened his eyes, he saw that all his clothes were simply cut with a knife, and his body was completely unharmed. The frightened older brother simply did not understand what to do, since the enemy not only humiliated him, but also deprived him of the opportunity to resist in a fight. Looking at his opponent for the last time, the main character exclaimed that they should no longer laugh to appear in front of him in the future, otherwise he would simply kill them. Thus, the bandits began to run away in fear, trying to carry their boss to a safe place. Anxious, Tang Dai told his comrade that he was indeed amazing, but he had humiliated the Huang family, and they could return. The hero didn't care much about this at that moment, and he said that probably someone was helping him, and now they better go to dinner. After a short journey to Tang Dai's house, they found themselves in a disadvantaged area where it was quite dirty. Entering home, Lu Mei could not believe that there were still such old houses. Although it was clean, it smelled strongly of alcohol. Looking around, the boy found a man lying on the bed, and not far from him there were bottles of alcohol. Covering the lying man with a blanket, Tang Dai said that this is his father. Even though he drinks almost every day and litters, he always has to clean the apartment after him. While examining the apartment, the boy also found a photograph with soldiers. This is how the hero realized that the man had fought before, but now he just lies drunk all day on the sofa. The young man nevertheless decided to ask his friend to tell one about himself and his family. Walking outside, Tang Dai pointed to a construction site. They used to live there, but that place was stolen by real estate agents at a very low price, and that night, several people died. Among the people who died in that conflict was Tang Dai's mother, which made him very sad. His father was also there that night, so his leg was injured. Those villains had power and influence, so they simply hid this conflict with money. A few minutes later, the father woke up and noticed that his son had brought a classmate with him. Luo Feng decided that it was still necessary to ask Tang Dai to go to the store for beer, because he wanted to have a couple of glasses with his father. As soon as the son left, his friend immediately greeted Uncle Tang and told him his name. Taking off his jacket, the main character exclaimed that he wanted to have a little sparring with his uncle. As the man began to laugh, he really appreciated the joke, saying that an old man like him couldn't compare with young people like him. That is why, covering himself with a blanket, the uncle decided to lie down a little longer until they brought beer. But Luo Feng decided not to retreat, and exclaimed that old man Tang, who was once part of the 17th Razor Knife Division, could not even spar, and this dishonored him as a soldier. Hearing this, the old man immediately reacted and did not like what was said. As he began to get out of bed, he was surprised by the young man's impudence, and could not believe that someone was telling him something like that. Thus, the fight began, and the man wanted to teach the boy a lesson for such insolence. Meanwhile, Tang Dai entered the house and was surprised by what happened. The guy noticed that the father and his friend were beaten, as if they had just fought. At the same time, the son also noticed that his father was really happy. Such a joyful reaction had not been seen on his face for a long time. During a short conversation, the man was able to reveal that his son's classmate was also once a soldier, and they decided to talk a little. In Uncle Tang's opinion, the youth in their time are already very strong, and he is not an opponent for Luo Feng. Feeling genuine joy, the man noticed that his opponent had excellent skills and wanted to know if he was also a member of the knife squad. Smiling, the boy exclaimed that he should take it higher, and then the man suggested that the young man belonged to the sword squad. Closing his eyes, the boy exclaimed that he was not in this detachment either, and then his uncle experienced a severe shock. The swordsman squad is already selected soldiers from the knife squad. Each swordsman must fight like 10 knives, the last ones remain, the best among the swordsmen, the legendary squad beyond measure. There really was a hero in this squad, but only for a couple of months, and then Uncle Tang started shouting that he couldn't even compare a little with the swordsman, and this guy in front of him was in the Transcendent squad for a few months, and it's just amazing. Looking at his uncle's reaction, the young man thought that he was even at a higher level, but he was afraid that it would scare his uncle if he spoke about it. Continuing to talk with his uncle, the hero asked him to tell him what happened between him and the Huang family, because he had to take revenge on them, otherwise he would remain a useless drunkard. This conversation was quite difficult for the man, because he had already tried all sorts of ways to take revenge, but nothing came of it. Through this conversation, Luo Feng made it clear to his uncle that he was also at enmity with the Huang family, and now they have a common enemy. Now he has limited capabilities and is not able to fight the enemy alone, but if they unite, then they will have a chance win. Hearing this, the man couldn't believe that the guy really had a way to defeat such serious enemies. But instead of using brute force, they need solid evidence to crush the entire Huang family at once, so they need Uncle's help to find the evidence. The determined uncle realized that he also needed to act, and he could easily find plenty of evidence of the Huang family's violations of the law. At the same time, Tang Dai decided to eavesdrop on the conversation, but did not quite understand what his classmate and father were talking about. Some time later, events continued to occur at the bus stop. The hero patiently waited for transport to get to his home. Suddenly, a car pulled up and stopped right next to the bus stop. As it turned out, it was Mr. Zheng, and the young man even began to suspect that he was following him everywhere, and no matter where he went, they would still find him. After getting into the car, Luo Feng felt that the gentleman was indeed a very rich man, and it was very suspicious that someone like him would need a poor student, and perhaps they could even be photographed by the paparazzi and consider the guy to be an illegitimate child. In fact, this time the man was really looking for the hero to thank him for saving his daughter, and he also wanted Luo Feng to do something for him. It turned out that the master wanted Luo Feng to become a bodyguard for his daughter, but the hero did not understand how this was even possible, because he was just a schoolboy and could not spend the whole day with his daughter. The bodyguard was needed only for her birthday, and the man had already found out who was behind those attacks, and she didn't like the bodyguards he offered, so he decided to find Luo Feng. Such work would pay well, and the man immediately began to take out an envelope with money. Looking at the amount of money in the envelope, the young man realized that there was more than 100,000 yuan, and now he simply had no reason to refuse. After which, the boss decided to kick the guy out of the car so that he could go home by bus, because he still had other things to do. But the guy didn't care about this at all, since with this money he didn't have to worry about paying the rent for a few more months. After some time, the boy found himself at home, and when he opened the door, he was quite surprised. Teacher Jun's outfit was actually quite amazing, like she was trying to cosplay as someone. It was not cosplay, but hanfu, that is, a traditional Chinese costume that is worn only during special ceremonies. Although the boy knew a little about tea ceremonies, he decided to drink tea with the teacher, although the girl did not invite him. Laughing, Luo Feng did not understand why he was not invited, because there were several cups of tea on the table, and besides them, there was no one at home. After smelling the tea, the young man immediately discovered that it was first-class Longjing tea, and in order to appreciate the true taste of tea, the hero decided to try it. But the temperature of the tea was bad, and the guy immediately thought that the teacher was simply pretending to understand tea ceremonies. From such statements, Teacher Jun began to get very angry, and she looked like a little girl. Bowing her head, the woman admitted that the young man was indeed right, but she just liked to conduct tea ceremonies. The old man who taught her said that she had no talent at all. According to the guy, it was not a question of talent, but a question of feelings. He just had a few groups with a woman, and as a sign of apology he would prepare a drink for her. Having started preparing tea, the main character sincerely believed that only tea in which they put their whole heart could be called the best tea. After a short preparation, the tea was ready, and the teacher did not understand whether it was even possible to drink such a strange drink. After tasting the tea, the woman found that the aroma was incredibly pure, and the aftertaste was very refreshing, as if her student turned out to be a master in tea ceremonies. In fact, the guy was not a master. This is the ability to be peaceful, quiet, sincere and serene. The only thing that was missing from the tea was sincerity. Hearing such a cooking secret, the teacher was really shocked. Still, she sometimes thought that Luo Feng was not at all like an ordinary student. After all, he had the ability to see through everything, so she decided to discuss something with him. Immediately after these words, the boy decided to leave, and then said that he was not interested in discussing Teacher Jun's personal problems, and it was time to go to bed. Reacting instantly, the woman asked Luo Feng to wait. Continuing to pour tea, Jun asked the young man to do her a favor. The woman actually had a rather unusual request, because tomorrow night she needed Luo Feng to pretend to be her boyfriend. After such a strange request, the hero realized that he would not be able to sleep, and therefore decided to go for a night run. Having already run several tens of kilometers, the guy didn't even think about stopping and continued training. Remembering that request, he immediately replied that Teacher Jun probably decided to play a trick on him, because he was a simple schoolboy, and was afraid that it would not work. As it turned out, this will only be necessary for tomorrow evening, because the teacher will have to see a man who is unpleasant to her, and she wants the student to help in case something goes wrong. Reflecting on this situation, the young man realized that the teacher was barely able to persuade him, and this really looks like some kind of cliché. Suddenly, someone nearby began to shout very loudly that the child was being kidnapped. They started beating some woman on the street, and her child was stolen by impudent scoundrels. Turning around, the main character immediately saw that someone was in danger. Using his trick, the boy immediately began to run to the crime scene to help the worried woman. Having reached maximum speed, Luo Feng had to perform a rather difficult trick. The running speed was simply incredible, thanks to which the hero managed to jump several tens of meters up. The river was successfully jumped over, and now the guy only had to catch up with the villains. Meanwhile, a man noticed that someone had jumped over the river, which was at least 10 meters wide. Hearing that someone was capable of something like that, the old man was incredibly surprised. Meanwhile, the villains were already running up to the car to load the child inside. Fortunately, the young man was already very close, and was about to punch the bald villain. After the first blow, the villain immediately flew several meters to the side and hit a tree. Feeling great fear, the bandit did not understand who this young guy was, but he took out a knife and said that no one would dare to interfere in their affairs. The protagonist's anger knew no bounds, and he was literally ready to kill the bandit who dared to steal a child. Looking at his opponent, the impudent man simply could not do anything, and stood rooted to the spot. Seeing that there was another villain in a car nearby, Luo Feng decided to eliminate him. Running up to the car, the young man hit the door with all his strength with his knee, which is why the car was damaged, as if it had been in an accident. For the partner in crime, it was simply a shocking sight, because he could not believe that a person was capable of something like that. The bandits, after a short fight, lay unconscious, one of them was right under a tree. Another bandit lay in a wrecked car, as if there had been a serious accident. The third bandit simply trembled with fear and raised his hands as he admitted his guilt. Having examined the crime scene, the man was simply shocked that one person did all this, and the woman did not even have time to see him, but he was a good guy, because he saved her child. Thus, the men discovered that the main actor had already left the stage, but in the old man's opinion there was nothing wrong with that. After all, the old man guessed who it was, since destructive force was used during this fight, and among all the people that he knew, only one was capable of something like that. This was the man whose face always remained hidden. The next day, events continued to occur at school, before the start of class. The joyful comrade told his brother that after talking with him, his father stopped drinking and even started training. Luo Feng was really very glad that he could help his friend, and asked if he would call him for dinner again, and he happily agreed. Turning around, Teacher Jun ordered Luo Feng and Tang Dai not to talk during class. Seeing the teacher's reaction, the boy immediately winked at her. After all, they were roommates. The woman was immediately embarrassed by this behavior and even blushed. Teacher Jun was previously the top student at Zhenjiang University, and she probably had many suitors. Tang Dai immediately realized that his friend had fallen in love with the teacher. The protagonist's friend had no idea that they literally lived with the teacher. Evening came and events continued to happen until the big event. In order for the boy to arrive dressed up for the event, the woman decided to give him a suit. As it turned out, these were designer clothes that cost a very long time, but June did not want to talk about it, and simply ordered her to wear a suit. 10 minutes later, the young man finally put on the suit and decided to show the teacher what he looked like in it. But at first the boy was embarrassed, because he did not say the size of his clothes, but the suit that the teacher gave him looked just perfect. A little embarrassed, the woman admitted that her student did look quite handsome, and exclaimed that he would be presented as a Harvard graduate, with his own company, from an annual salary in the millions. It was truly an impressive image, and the young man realized that he was so good that he would never have come up with such nonsense on his own. 2 hours later the teacher also got dressed. She put on a chic dress, but Luo Feng waited for her for so long that he even fell asleep. As soon as the girl arrived, the boy immediately woke up because he heard someone talking to him. Blushing, the teacher began to apologize for being a little late, but Luo Feng understood that this was natural. Going out into the street, the hero decided to call a taxi to come to the event. But the teacher immediately stopped him, saying that since he was an entrepreneur with an annual salary of $1 million, he was obliged to have his own car. And this car stood right under their house. It was simply gorgeous, and incredibly expensive. Seeing that Luo Feng was shocked, June simply told him to get in the car and come to the event. Laughing, the young man exclaimed that since the teacher asks him, he cannot refuse her, and for her sake he is ready to drive even a tank. Together they got into the car and headed to the event for which they had been preparing for so long. All this time, sitting in the car, the boy was only thinking that he should not show that he was surprised. The teacher immediately confirmed this, and also asked not to call her teacher anymore. In this case, Luo Feng wanted to know what to call the girl. Blushing, the teacher replied that she should be called Mimi. This was quite unusual for the guy, since he was used to calling the girl Teacher June. But still, he didn't pay attention to this. He decided to ask her in more detail about the person she doesn't want to see, because suddenly he won't be able to afford to get involved with him. Then he'll just smile and pretend to be stupid. This man turned out to be the girl's fiancé, whom her parents found for her. They wanted a rich son-in-law for themselves. Hearing later that the suitor was rich, Luo Feng immediately said that if he was offered 10 million to break up with Mimi, he would gladly agree. Despite all the conflicts, the couple still headed to the event. After they arrived at the venue, it turned out that it was a huge yacht, and the hero immediately assumed that its owner was rich, but in fact it was rented. Holding hands, Mimi and Luo Feng headed to the huge yacht, because they were already waiting for them there. The staff present on the yacht immediately noticed that Miss June had arrived at the event, and said that her fiancé was waiting for her on the 3rd floor, but they did not understand who came with her. At that moment, the girl exclaimed that her boyfriend had come with her. For the staff, this was simply a shocking statement. After entering the yacht, Luo Feng realized that the girl's rich groom belonged to the Situ family in Beijing. he even heard that this family was quite large, and no one dared to offend them in Beijing. Suddenly, someone started shouting the girl's name and ran along with flowers to greet her. Probably this was the same suitor from a rich family, and he brought a bouquet to gain mutual sympathy from Mimi. Looking at this bouquet, the girl thanked her boyfriend, but said that she did not like the flowers at all. Without hesitation, the man threw away the flowers and said to forget about them, after which he decided to ask Mimi why she decided to leave Beijing, like a bird of free flight that flew into the distance. As soon as the man realized that the girl had not answered this question, he immediately decided to invite her to a luxurious dinner, which would include beef that was brought from abroad. Having thanked her for the invitation, Mimi was about to refuse, but Luo Feng said that since she was invited, it would be impolite to refuse. Starting to blush with shame, the girl nodded politely and said that they would still go to dinner in that case. At that very moment, a guy from a rich family noticed the boy holding Mimi's hand and immediately began to call security, since there was an uninvited guest on board. Seeing the aggression on the part of the interlocutor, Mimi immediately calmed down, because it was her boyfriend, but the impudent man did not care at all, and he did not understand whether the boy was really not afraid to take his girl away. Feeling a strong dislike for his interlocutor, the young man decided to act and grabbed the impudent man's finger. Approaching closer, Luo Feng ordered his interlocutor to better choose his words for conversation, otherwise he would send his headless body to his brother Michin. Starting to laugh evilly, the young man ordered Situ to apologize to the lady for his behavior, and he immediately began to apologize because he was afraid of Luo Feng. Sith began to try to find out who his interlocutor was, and why he dared to treat a member of the Situ family so disrespectfully. "I'm trying to calm down the arrogant scoundrel," the hero exclaimed that he is his father, and they don't understand where such a scoundrel like him comes from in the Situ family. Meanwhile, someone came closer to the guys who were in conflict and said that Luo Feng should show his interlocutor his respect, because if he had not known his brother in the past, he would have already died. This man turned out to be Mimi's grandfather, and this made her even more shocked. Looking at the elderly man who came to the ship, the main character was truly shocked. The elderly man said that he came here to see his granddaughter, but he never expected to meet Luo Feng here. Thus, old acquaintances met, and it seemed that grandfather was really happy about such a meeting. Moving closer to her grandfather, Mimi tried to find out when he arrived and how he knew Luo Feng. In fact, they didn't just know each other, and after breaking up with Luo Feng, grandfather looked for him for 2 years, and then he met him here. Feeling intense rage towards his interlocutor, the young man exclaimed that he should have fixed that problem, and not looked for him. Grandfather explained that they tried to do this, and sent people dozens of times to search, but they never found his body, Luo Feng, but he only said that it was not tigers, nor wolves, nor panthers, nor any animals that should stop them, because does the fact that they didn't find the body matter to him? Listening to this entire conversation, Mimi did not understand at all what was being said, and did not even know what they were talking about among themselves. Bowing his head, the young man asked teacher June to forget about it, and said that he could no longer help her, after which he was about to leave first. Realizing that it was impossible to lose such an important person as Luo Feng, grandfather exclaimed that after his departure, Xianyuan Pavilion ceased to be popular, and even the top 20 masters left one after another. To this argument, the young man only replied that he was not omnipotent and was not going to return, since he was now a simple high school student. Unexpectedly, a man stood in the way of the main character and asked him to stop. Feeling animosity towards the guy, the man said that old man June asked him not to leave and he should have stopped. Looking at the stranger, Luo Feng said that he is not his opponent, and he is not in the mood right now, so you shouldn't blame him for this. Hearing such an answer, the interlocutor did not tolerate insolence, and immediately decided to grab the guy to teach him a lesson for insolence. The main character did not like this at all, and he decided to teach his interlocutor a lesson. First, the guy hit the man with his elbow with all his might, so that he wouldn't dare order him what to do. From such a strong blow, the man immediately fell and hit the wall. Trying to calm everyone down, Mimi shouted for the guys to stop fighting. The man did not care at all about this request, and he began to swing his arms in order to strike the young man. The blow had absolutely no effect on the outcome of the fight, and Luo Feng decided to attack again. The enemy even began to tremble with fear, because he realized that the young guy was indeed very fast and strong. I turned to Old Man June. The man apologized, saying that he lost, but in June's opinion, Jiang Tao should not blame himself because he was defeated by an unusual person. After all, the man lost to the strongest soldier in China, the top 100 soldiers in the whole world, and the top 3 killer. The main character had a nickname. His friends and enemies called him King Lo Feng. Some time later, events continued to occur at the disco. Many people were dancing and having fun to the music, and did not even suspect who was nearby. It was the same King Lo Feng who decided to relax a little and have a drink after a hard day of work. All this time the young man was only thinking about what happened several years ago. Previously, the main character accompanied a girl whom he rescued from the forest where the fire started. A large number of dogs were chasing the 2 travelers and wanted to grab them. After a long chase, Luo Feng discovered that they were near a cliff and there was nowhere to run. Luo Feng's companion did not have time to stop before the cliff and fell down, which is why the young man always thought that she had died. Only he managed to save during this mission, and now he missed his partner all the time. Because of this, the main character was now very angry with his boss, who could not even find the girl's body. Meanwhile, suddenly, some girl accidentally bumped into Luo Feng. The boy immediately did not understand what was the matter, and why the stranger behaved this way, because it was quite impudent. The frightened girl started screaming that she was a little hasty and accidentally hurt him, and for which she was very apologetic. All this time the hero was watching the girl, and was incredibly golden. But after he heard the apology, he immediately began to be more kind and said that everything was fine. Looking back, the girl saw that she was being pursued, and immediately realized that she needed to hide. The stranger immediately began to crawl under the table in order to hide near Lo Feng. Hiding under the bar counter, Lady begged for help, because she was in trouble. A man with a bandage over one eye shouted that his charges were eyeless pigs, because they did not see where exactly the girl had fled. The boss ordered his subordinates to hurry up, because if the girl runs away, they will have big problems. Fortunately, the lady was still able to hide from the villains and remained unnoticed. Turning to the stranger, the young man said that she could already get out, because the bandits had gone far, although Inya was against the fact that she would remain there for some more time. As soon as she got out of the steam room, she immediately began to apologize for this incident, and the boy gave her advice to run away from here, because the people chasing her were really dangerous. As she began to leave, the girl decided to say goodbye to her savior, and was indeed very grateful to him. Thinking about what happened, Luo Feng even imagined for a second that he had met the same girl, but it was only a minute-long meeting, and it seemed like he had drunk too much. Nevertheless, the bandits found the girl, and the boss ordered his subordinates to seize her. Trying to ask the main character for help, the girl began to beg him to call the police. At that moment, the young man pretended that he didn't care at all and did not react in any way. Bowing his head, Luo Feng waited for the bandits to leave so he could calmly go to his home. Unexpectedly, one bandit came closer and told the guy that he had better forget what he just saw, otherwise he wouldn't be able to see anything at all. Stepping aside, at the last moment the bandit said that the guy should not dare provoke them, a gang of black foxes. Hearing the name of the gang, the main character immediately went berserk and was incredibly angry, which is why he started beating the villain. Such an event was truly impressive for the boss and the other gang members. After all, no one could have expected that an ordinary guy was capable of such a thing. Blushing with anger, the young man did not understand how it could be that wherever he went, everywhere it was a gang of black foxes, as if a pig was giving birth to them. The boss looked at the guy and asked if he knew who he was talking to and whose bar this was. The bar's visitors noticed that it was the famous Cyclops, which is why they did not envy the guy, because he had messed with the Cyclops in vain. In the Black Fox gang, there are 4 famous masters, a great white shark, a black dog, a crazy tiger and a Cyclops. They all have distinctive characteristics, each is fierce and strong, and there are also big people behind them. Cyclops exclaimed that when someone comes into a bar to do business or just have a drink, they consider him their brother, but when the customers create problems for him, they cannot sit idly by, which is why he decided to ask the guy's name. Grabbing his hand, the young man exclaimed that his name was Sheriff Black Cat, and ordered everyone to raise their hands up. The bandits began to talk among themselves that the young guy was probably just too drunk and should be forgotten, but the Cyclops thought that they still had a reputation and would spoil it badly because of such visitors. Turning to the Cyclops, the young man said that he would not go anywhere, and first take care of that little chick, because he wanted to take her with him. This made the bandits even more angry, and he said that this woman had just filmed their confidential negotiations, and if she did not return the video to them, they would not be able to release her. Hearing this, the boy immediately exclaimed that she seemed to have given the video to him, and starting to rummage through his pockets, he did not find it. The other bandits immediately reacted to this and ordered the guy to quickly look for the video if he really had it. At that same second, the young man looked angrily at these bandits so that they would not approach him. The man immediately felt true fear and realized that their interlocutor had a truly evil appearance. Smiling, the hero noticed that these guys were just trash, and dared to offend a defenseless girl. Garbage always remains garbage, and they will not hide their nature in any way, coming up with different names for their gangs. The people present could not understand at all how this happened, since an ordinary guy began to contradict the gang of black foxes. One of the bandits began to shout that the young man was provoking them, and he was looking down on the gang of black foxes, as if he was looking for his death. The drunk boy exclaimed that he was really looking for death, and told the face to try to kill him. Soon after, the young man noticed that his alcohol had run out, which is why he asked for more. The boss gradually began to think that ability would not have more self-confidence, and he has the courage to challenge all the bandits. That is why the Cyclops shouted that he was famous for his game of darts. If someone could dodge his darts, then he would let him and the girl go. The wards realized that this was not a secret technique of the Cyclops. Everyone said that he could kill with a dart so that the enemy did not even have time to notice. Suddenly, the girl screamed for the guys to let go, because this concerns only her, and he has nothing to do with it, which is why she was about to give the video, since it was just a drunk passerby. Only the boy had a different opinion, and said that he was accepting the bandits' challenge, because he wanted to see if he could evade his darts. Smiling wickedly, Cyclo was ready to begin and ordered his enemy to get ready. The music in the club suddenly stopped and there was silence. Due to the fact that the young man drank a lot, he staggered left and right, and it turned out that it was quite difficult to hit him. The man at that moment was thinking that this kid should be grateful to him for the fact that he had the opportunity to see the skills of the Cyclops. In order to master this technique, Bandit even had to go blind in one eye. And this guy was not afraid to publicly challenge him, and he was the first to ask for his own death. It seemed that at that moment the main character did not care at all, and he continued to drink alcohol. Having set himself up to throw, the bandit exclaimed that now he would do it. Swinging the dart with all his might, the boss made a throw he didn't expect to be lethal. At the moment of the throw, the young man continued to drink, no matter what, as if he didn't care. Realizing that the enemy was very arrogant, the Cyclops used a secret technique called 3 deadly throws. Looking at everything that was happening, the lady saw a vile old man who attacked the enemy, who was not even ready to attack. Starting to laugh evilly, the enemy asked the young man what he thought was why he managed to occupy such an important position, and even if he could dodge the first dart, he threw the other two so that no matter where he dodges, one of the darts would definitely kill him. During the attack, no one could have expected that a drunk guy would be able to withstand such a complex technique. Looking at the glass that contained 4 darts, the hero really couldn't believe that the opponent was able to throw so many darts, and it was truly worthy of respect. The rescued girl was happy that her savior evaded absolutely everyone else, while the bandits were in shock. As the lady got closer to the hero, she really realized how amazing he was in this battle, and since the Cyclops lost, they can leave this club. Suddenly, the bandit exclaimed that he did not allow anyone to leave and ordered everyone to remain in their places. Since the guy really turned out to be strong and was able to catch all 4 darts, who can get out? However, this lady must also dodge all the throws. Showing her tongue, the girl began to resist, saying that now she has a little brother who protects her, and she is no longer afraid of anyone. After thinking a little, the main character realized that there was only one way to defeat the Cyclops, and it was quite unusual. In order to finally win this competition, the young man used his wits and threw darts. At that same second the enemy was defeated and began to scream in pain as the dart hit him right in the eye. Trying to stay on his feet, the bandit did everything possible, and his charges told him to be careful. In extreme pain, the enemy shouted that he could no longer see and ordered all his allies to be called in to deal with this guy. A few hours later, all of Cyclops' allies arrived at the club, and the army of bandits was truly impressive. The alarmed lady told her brother that there were too many bandits and he had better run away, because this matter did not concern him. Laughing, the hero realized that in fact he was waiting for this, and a little girl like her had better hide somewhere until all this is over. Preparing for the battle, the guy really wanted to have a blast in order to finish off absolutely all the members of the Black Fox group. Many enemies tried to attack the ordinary guy, but they did not yet know how much power he had. Attacks against this young opponent were indeed useless, because he fought back with ease. The enemies simply could not believe that an ordinary person was capable of possessing such power, and began to fear Law. The boy could easily defeat absolutely any opponent, and it was not difficult for him. Using his physical abilities, the young man could easily throw a heavy man several tens of meters. Such attacks actually turned out to be quite effective, since upon collision the enemies received enormous damage. There were several other opponents nearby who were about to attack from behind, but Luo Feng was also prepared for this. With the help of his Tai, the hero was able to fight off this attack, using his dexterity and ingenuity. Each blow was impressive, and the opponents simply did not understand how to fight such an enemy. Subsequent blows from the enemies missed, and Luo Feng used his advantage. Even the most muscular and powerful enemies were defeated, because they did not know who they were dealing with. One of the strongest opponents was defeated, and the bandits immediately saw it. For the follow-up attack, the protagonist jumped several meters into the air to launch an airstrike. Now the guy didn't care what people thought about him, because he wanted to show his true strength. None of the bandits present could understand what was happening or how to fight such an enemy. The excited Cyclops continued to scream in pain and asked the servants whether they had killed this guy. The alarmed men did not know at all how to answer this question, and simply remained silent. Only one man dared to say that Luo Feng was able to kill more than 30 bandits from the group. Sighing with relief, the young man realized that he was finally feeling better. Screaming out of anger, the Cyclops didn't know where this guy came from, and it didn't matter that he defeated him today. After all, they would still take revenge, since the weakest of the 4 great masters of the Black Fox gang had now been defeated. The unshakable young man asked the boss of the Black Foxes what would happen next, because he didn't care at all. In fact, he didn't like being threatened, but Cyclops was lucky that the hero was already tired today, and he really is always ready to fight anyone. Taking his jacket, the young man said that he was leaving, but the girl asked him to wait. Without turning around, the boy almost forgot to introduce himself and said that his name was Luo Feng, and he didn't want the bandits to accidentally find the wrong person. The surviving bandit asked the boss what he should do. The Cyclops immediately answered that it was necessary to tell the boss and the 3 masters that they had missed the girl, and about the boy who helped her. Some time later, events continued to occur in the city at night. The girl ran after the hero all this time and literally begged him to wait for her. Looking around, the young man could not understand why the girl was contacting him with a comma because she was not in any danger. In fact, she just wanted to officially meet her, and said that her name is Tsun Jingmei. She is interning as a journalist at a news channel. Now the hero understood why she filmed their dirty trade, and they were chasing her, and this was really the case, since she obtained evidence, and this time she completely exposed them. In Luo Feng's opinion, the girl was too naive, because such a large and powerful group would not be put in jail just because of a couple of pieces of evidence, and she had better forget about this work and also leave the city. Following this, the journalist shouted for her brother to at least leave her his phone number so that they could call him later. Meanwhile, Cyclops was reporting to his boss, who told him that he had let him down. The mysterious man wore a mask all the time and never took it off. Even his charges did not see his real face. The masked man wanted to find out from the Cyclops how all this happened, and why one guy was able to defeat an entire army of mercenaries. Trembling with anger, the man said that perhaps he really was weaker than the others, but that guy was simply amazing, because he had never met anyone like him. Another man stood nearby, who asked the Cyclops to finish reading the Manhwa, because his fantasy had run wild, although now he had both eyes missing, and he would no longer be able to read anything. Suddenly, another man came in and boss called him a white shark. The white shark found out that that woman's name is Qin Jingmei. She is interning as a journalist for a news channel, and as for that guy, he is a transfer student from a high school. It seems that he has often had conflicts with their gang of black foxes lately. The other bandit also realized that it was indeed the same guy, because he had recently dealt with Huang Ma-chen in just a couple of blows. The shark also knew that the brother of the crazy tiger was the first to provoke Luo Feng, and after he was beaten, he ran to the black foxes, and then when he and the black foxes were beaten again, he cowardly ran away, swallowing his snot and tears. The mad tiger immediately became enraged and realized that his ally was probably getting into a fight, which is why they were going to find out who was stronger. Looking at the conflict between the tiger and the shark, the convoy immediately stopped them, since there was no need for this. After thinking a little, the mysterious man let the tiger deal with this guy, and asked him to do everything carefully, because a person like Luo Feng is dangerous for them, and if necessary, he will not spare any effort to get rid of him. At the same time, the young man sneezed, because someone remembered him at that moment. Thinking that someone was probably thinking about him now, the guy was very interested in who decided to remember him. Having parked an expensive car near the house, the young man decided to go inside to sleep. Opening the door to the house, Luo Feng found Teacher June, who was lying on the sofa and fell asleep from powerlessness. The boy, of course, was a little amazed that the teacher fell asleep right here, because you could catch a cold, which is why he decided to cover her with a jacket. According to the hero, he was caring, because he was going to cover the teacher with his jacket. But the girl at that moment began to be afraid of him, because she thought that he was going to do something, and was undressing for this. A few minutes later, the guy received a serious blow, and wanted to ask the teacher where she got so much strength from. Trying to justify herself, June didn't know that the guy would return so late, and he scared her a lot. Moreover, she didn't do it on purpose, which is why she apologized. Feeling sad, the young man said that it's okay, he'll just go to sleep and everything will pass. Caring Mimi decided to apologize for today, because she did not know what happened between him and her grandfather, and why he was there. But it seemed that the two of them had known each other for a long time, and her grandfather also said that Luo Feng was a king who shook the world. The boy did not dare answer this question, and only said that the king could not turn into such a beggar as he was. The teacher didn't mean that, and decided to find out why he transferred to the middle school, and how he knew people from Beijing, and who he really was. Laughing, Luo Feng said that he really was a king who shook the world, and is also a Superman who saved humanity more than once. The woman still did not believe the guy, because she understood that he was not an ordinary high school student. All this made the teacher think about what was happening, and she still did not understand who Luo Feng really was. The next morning, the main character went for a run again and quickly ran to the meeting place. Stopping not far from a shop with delicacies, the young man could not resist and asked the chef to prepare him pancakes with milk. After the boy ate, he headed to the Zheng family mansion. Looking at this building, Luo Feng was truly shocked by how rich this family was. Approaching the entrance to the mansion, he was immediately met by Donghua. He is a noble of the Zheng family. The man also informed that the gentleman had already gone on business. Suddenly, another guest arrived. It was Mr. Bao. He was an ardent admirer of the lady. Today was Vivi's birthday, and the man wanted to come early in order to give her a great gift. Such a guest alarmed the young man a little, but he was ready for any events that could happen on his birthday. Meanwhile, the hero of the occasion had already come out, and immediately saw that Luo Feng had also arrived. It was noticeable that the girl was very happy to see such an expected guest. The guest with green hair noticed that Vivi looked simply irresistible, and immediately fell in love with her. The alarmed girl asked the main character not to call her young miss, because she was unpleasant when he said that, and asked him to just call her Vivi. Mr. Bao prepared an expensive gift for the girl and pointed to the piano, which he specially brought from abroad, and it cost him several million. While the main character apologized that he didn't have time to prepare a gift for her, so he just brought pancakes with milk, and congratulated the girl on her birthday. Laughing, Vivi exclaimed that she really liked this gift. Looking at everything that was happening, Donghua was simply shocked that Vivi had absolutely no reaction to Mr. Bao's gift. A few minutes later, the girl was lying in her room, thinking that she actually took this gift for nothing, but she doesn't even like street food. The embarrassed girl had no idea what the main character was thinking about her, but she really had a very pleasant feeling. Meanwhile, the boy was sitting on the sofa in the living room, waiting for the hero of the occasion. The green-haired guy decided to meet the young man and told him that his name was Bao Ning. As it turned out, Luo Feng knew this guy, because he and his grandfather named Bao Jiaoji knew each other. In fact, Bao Ning's grandfather's name was completely different, namely Bao Yuan, and the boy immediately thought that Luo Feng did not know him. The butler also said that it is normal that he does not know Mr. Bao. After all, he is one of the 8 elite people of Yangchen, and Mr. Bao's talent is music, especially playing the piano. Hearing this, the young man immediately remembered that this guy was nicknamed the best player, but it sounded kind of nerdy. The butler also reacted instantly to such an insult, and told Mr. Bao that it really didn't sound very good, and he had better change his name to the best musician or the best pianist. Suddenly, someone else came to the birthday party and decided to find out what the interlocutors were chatting about. It was a pink-haired girl, and she greeted Dongbua first since they had not seen each other for a long time. Dongbua immediately recognized the girl, and remembered that her name was Beibei. They had not seen each other for 10 years. The young lady was on the second floor, and the butler immediately wanted to call her, because he was sure that she would be glad to see Beibei. Looking at the girl, Bao Ning couldn't understand why he didn't know that Vivi had such a friend. The girl clearly did not like this question, and she immediately wanted to hit the impudent scoundrel. Beibei's foot stopped right in front of Bao Ning's face, and he began to panic because he was afraid that he was about to be hit. Laughing, the girl asked if Fatty really wanted to know everything about Vivi. Looking at this small fight, the young man realized that the girl was indeed moving quite quickly. Beibei also looked at the hero and decided to ask if he was also a fan of knowing something, but the guy remained silent. Vivi, meanwhile, she had already begun to descend from the second floor, and was glad that Beibei had finally returned. The two girls had not seen each other since elementary school. There they were best friends, but Beibei suddenly went abroad, and Vivi was very upset. As it turned out, now the girl was no longer a lady. She studied boxing abroad and returned to China just to go to Vivi's birthday, and also offered to be her bodyguard. Joyful Vivi immediately agreed with this proposal, and said that they wanted to go shopping together, and invited Luo Feng along with her, but Beibei was against it, since her motorcycle was a 2-seater. Nevertheless, the guys managed to agree among themselves, since Bao Ning had a car and he could take Luo Feng to the store. A few minutes later, the girls were already heading towards the store, and Beibei and Vivi were riding a motorcycle at high speed. The main character at the same time urged Bao Ning to drive faster, since the girls could leave without them. The smug guy didn't understand why he should be the driver for the bodyguard, but he still continued to follow the birthday girl. After a short journey, events continued to take place in the shopping area. There were a large number of people around the shopping area, and they were all about to enter the shopping center to buy some clothes for themselves. Passers-by near the shopping center began to discuss Vivi, and that she looked very beautiful, but her companions looked like some kind of pigs. Looking at the girl, Beibei also noticed that Vivi is like a princess, and everyone admires her. The young man was watching the girls all this time, and he was disgusted that they were so easily spending the money that Boss Zheng had earned. At this time, Bao Ning was very dissatisfied because absolutely all the bags of clothes were given to him, which is why he did all the hard work. Approaching the boy, the young man began to calm him down, saying that going shopping with Vivi was much better than playing the piano for her. Vivi has been wealthy since birth and is used to luxury, and she really won't be surprised by playing the piano, but her father is constantly busy with business, and he hardly spends time with her. Having finished shopping, the girls suddenly stopped, and Beibei immediately asked what was the matter. It turned out that Vivi was just hungry and wanted to go to a restaurant to order a steak. Thus, they all went to a restaurant together, and the girl was very glad that she spent her birthday in such a company, and she had a lot of fun. After overhearing a conversation between the girls, Bao Ning noticed that Beibei was acting like a guy, and he really didn't like it. Luo Feng decided to reassure his new comrade, and said that this is probably not up to the boy says bad things just to get closer to Vivi, and if you fall for her provocations, then Bao Ning will immediately lose. Hearing this, the guy immediately shouted that if Vivi likes the steak in this restaurant, then he will buy this entire restaurant and give it to Vivi. Feeling awkward, the girl thanked her brother, but said that she does not often eat steak, and this upset the potential groom a little. Despite the small argument, the hero still said that they needed to calm down a little and continue eating. Meanwhile, a suspicious waiter walked towards Vivi and pretended to be carrying food. In fact, it was an attempt on the girl's life, and the scoundrel took out a knife in order to use it for its intended purpose. The young lady was in danger, and the main character and Bei immediately noticed this. The determined lady immediately wanted to take action to stop the assassination attempt. Grabbing the knife, she literally threw it towards the waiter in order to perform one unusual trick. This knife flew close to the waiter and completely missed him. At that moment, someone threw a fork to prevent the assassination attempt and nail the weapon to the ceiling. The excited waiter began to make excuses to the client, saying that he forgot to put the cutlery. Bei immediately noticed that Luo Feng interrupted her attack, because he not only predicted that she would throw the knife, but also threw the fork so that her knife changed its trajectory. Looking at the girl, the young man exclaimed that she really needed to relax a little, because lack of composure creates mistakes, and she could take an innocent life. Not understanding how this was possible, Bei was simply in shock and did not understand what kind of person was now in front of her. The main character at that moment replied that he was a simple classmate of Zheng Vivi, and did not understand why she was so surprised. Frightened, the girl suggested that the guy was probably really not an ordinary odnoclassnian. Hearing this question, Vivi decided to get involved in the dialogue, and exclaimed that Luo Feng was truly amazing, and he saved her from kidnappers earlier. The smug girl immediately realized that thanks to this classmate, Vivi was safe. This was indeed true, and the hero also said that today he is her bodyguard, and this made Vivi happy, since she now had 2 whole knights in white armor. A few hours later, events continued to occur at the amusement park, where the birthday celebration continued. Going through various attractions, the birthday girl was very happy. She liked to have fun in this way, but Bao Ning only suffered from this. Finally, the birthday party was over and sunset came. The birthday girl thanked all her guests, because she had never had so much fun. While communicating with each other, the girls realized that they needed to go to the restroom. Events continued in the restroom, and Bei decided to contact someone by phone. While texting a stranger, he wrote to her that she had almost revealed her true identity, and it was just an idiotic mistake. Upon seeing this message, Bei immediately threw away her phone so that there would be no evidence that she was a criminal. As if nothing had happened, the girl left the restroom to take care of Vivi. Coming out of the toilet, Bei found Luo Feng, who had been standing all this time, waiting for her. Indignant, the young man exclaimed that he was Vivi's bodyguard and wanted to know where she had gone. Looking at this boy, Bei thought that he probably knew who she was and was specially following her, or he was just a pervert who was taking advantage of the opportunity. After they all left the toilet together, they immediately headed home to send Vivi to bed. The joyful girl was grateful to her companion, and told her that she would never forget today. Finally, the lady returned, and Dongbo was very happy about her return, asking if she had fun. Thanks to the wonderful day, the birthday girl was in a great mood, and she was going to change clothes in order to continue the celebration. The main character stood not far from Bei and said that he was very sorry for Vivi. A young girl, as beautiful as spring flowers, is constantly the target of ruthless conspiracies, but she could be as happy as she is every day today. The birthday girl really had an innocent smile, as if an angel had descended from heaven. But today someone wanted to destroy this innocent smile from this angel, and this someone is her best friend. Looking at Bei, the young man ordered her to stop pretending, because it no longer makes sense, since she had already seen his abilities. Looking at her interlocutor, the girl decided to ask if he really thought he could stop her. To this question, the young man only asked if Bei really wanted to check this. Suddenly, Luo Feng relaxed, and asked his interlocutor to also calm down. After all, he also used to be an assassin, but now he has retired, so she can relax, and Boss Zheng pays him 100,000 yuan for protecting her, which is why he wanted to find out how much her employer pays Bei. The interlocutor was very surprised and immediately began to deny everything that was said, as if the guy was not right in the head. The smart young man said that if her boss pays more, otherwise he doesn't mind joining her, and they will share the reward. He will take 70%, and she will take 30%, because in the end he will have to be beaten. In a panic, Bei began to leave, saying that she did not understand what the interlocutor was talking about. Thus, since she did not agree, he would again have to remain as her bodyguard. At that same second, a loud scream was heard from the room where Vivi was. Realizing that the girl might be in danger, Bebe immediately began to climb onto the balcony. At that time, the main character simply continued to run towards the building in order to also climb onto it. Having jumped onto the building, Luo Feng was the first on the balcony, and immediately asked Vivi what happened. Bebe also arrived on the balcony, because she thought that someone had gotten ahead of her. In fact, the girl was simply playing with a cat she found on her balcony. No one clearly expected such a turn of events, and Bebe and Luo Feng were simply in shock. At that same second, the girl noticed that there were bodyguards on her balcony and wanted to understand what they were doing here. Standing at attention, the young man exclaimed that everything was clear on the balcony, and Bebe asked him not to pretend to be obedient to the soldiers, because one soldier would be enough to protect Vivi. After several minutes, events continued to occur at home, where the hero was sitting not far from the second bodyguard. After the situation happened, the boy began to drink tea, and Bebe felt very awkward. In a calm tone, the young man told his colleague that she was too impulsive. Meanwhile, another guest came and said that he was glad to see Dongbua. It was Mr. Chu Chiu. A stately man arrived at Vivi's birthday to congratulate her, because even Uncle Zheng did not know that he would come. The birthday guests present realized that this was the eldest son of the Chiu family, a super-rich teenager nicknamed Autumn Chiu. The guy was surrounded by many bodyguards, and all of them were literally ready to kill anyone who dared to harm him. Chu Chiu suddenly announced that he was inviting everyone present to visit the 5-star hotel he had booked and celebrate his birthday there. Looking at everything that was happening, Bebe realized that her mission had failed, since Chu Chiu's bodyguards were mercenaries retired from the battlefields. Feeling anxious, the girl decided to understand what the hell was going on here, and why someone was forcing people to leave this mansion. The bodyguard turned to the hero and girlfriend, saying that they also needed to leave. Putting the glass on the table, Luo Feng decided to understand on what grounds he should leave. After all, he arrived here to celebrate the birthday of his classmate Vivi, and has not yet had time to eat the cake that she will cut. Seeing this guy, Chu Chiu immediately decided to find out who this person was. Bao Ning reported to him that it was a simple classmate of Vivi. Smiling, the guy politely asked why not a simple classmate go to the hotel. Dishes were already prepared there for every taste, and there would also be a lot of entertainment programs, and he definitely wouldn't be disappointed if he went there. The impudent bodyguard also came closer to the guy, and touching him on the shoulder, said that he definitely needed to leave. Unable to tolerate such behavior on the part of the man, the young man decided to act. Kicking the villain right in the head, he nailed him straight to the table with all his might. Feeling strong difficulties during the resistance, the man realized that he could not get out, and this guy was really stronger than him. Laughing, the hero added that he never loses in battle, and if Chu Chiu could not make him leave, then he would stay and eat cake. Looking at this fight, the guests were simply shocked, because they understood that an ordinary classmate was confronting Chu Chiu himself. Bebe was also able to understand that this guy is so treacherous, and he deliberately hit this bodyguard, and now they are using Zheng Mansion as a shield. Chu Chiu turned to Mr. Vivi's classmate and said that he came here to congratulate Vivi on her birthday and was not going to look for trouble. The boy didn't even want to listen to this rich man, because he was dissatisfied with the fact that people like him grow up rich and beautiful. Moreover, first, he should have asked Vivi herself for an opinion, and not kicked out all the guests. According to the guest, Vivi definitely had to agree, because he had prepared a special gift for her that she definitely couldn't refuse. Unexpectedly, the hero of the occasion herself arrived, as well as her father, who wanted to find out what gift the eldest son of the Chiu family had prepared for his daughter. After kissing Vivi's hand, Chu Chiu immediately congratulated her on her birthday personally. Since Uncle Zheng wanted to see the gift, he could no longer hide it, and asked the bodyguards to bring it here. After all, everyone had to look at it. The muscular man began to take out the very expected gift that Chu Chiu had been preparing for so long. As it turned out, it was a snow magic mountain flower, which had quite unusual properties. Some said that this magic flower could preserve youth forever. Everyone understood that this was not an item that could be bought with money, and no one could refuse it. Chu Chiu gave this flower to Vivi and hoped that she could remain as beautiful as a butterfly and live a very long life. The excited girl said that she was really pleased with this gift, but she was afraid that it was too expensive for her and she could not accept it. Laughing, Luo Feng said that Vivi should accept this flower, because in truth, it is not that valuable, just like an ordinary flower from a flower bed near their mansion. This answer did not satisfy Chu Chiu, and he did not understand what this impudent guy said, and wanted to understand what Odnoklas Niki gave her, and Bao Ning said that he gave her street food. Because of this, the guests began to laugh, and almost died of laughter, because they did not understand that such a poor man as Luo Feng had completely forgotten here. According to the young man, this flower was completely useless, and his street food would bring much more benefit. The people present at the event began to discuss that probably this magical flower on which Chu Chiu spent a fortune and a huge amount of effort was actually useless, and he should be ashamed. Thus, Chu Chiu realized that the merchant had probably fooled him back then, since he had sold this magical flower for 50 million yuan. At least Chu Chiu was really trying to make a good impression, and all the guests could see his sincerity. The angry boy decided to ask the hero if he was deliberately trying to humiliate him, because he saw that he also liked Vivi. Looking at her classmate, Vivi had no idea that Luo Feng might like her. The father of the Zhen family hinted to the guy that he should not leave the mansion, since he promised to protect Vivi, which is why the young man was not even going to leave this place. Looking around, the guy discovered a piano that stood nearby. Remembering another gift, Chu Chiu immediately began to go to the piano in order to give it. The guy did this only because his classmate Vivi provoked him, and he wanted to demonstrate a composition called Spring Breeze. In a strange turn of events, the festive banquet turned into a battle between two men for Vivi's favor. Chu Chiu really played the piano very beautifully, but this was not surprising, because he is after all a member of the Chiu family, and everyone there is talented and beautiful. Hearing the piano play, Vivi realized that Mr. Chu Chiu was indeed very handsome and talented, but she knew that he was only here because his family wanted to become related to their family. A little embarrassed, the girl asked Luo Feng to make his departure in order to demonstrate his favor to her. Vivi began to think that she was caught up in the rivalry between Luo Feng and Chu Chiu, and she would have to make a choice, but she didn't know at all who to choose. Even Bebe couldn't say it was an excellent melody, but it definitely required years of practice. The guests at the birthday party started clapping for the guy because they appreciated the melody he played on the piano. Smirking, the evil young man asked his classmate if he could surprise Vivi with something. All this time the hero simply sat silently and did not answer anything. The father of the Zheng family also watched the guy and thought that he could not afford to offend the Chiu family, but he also could not leave Vivi defenseless, because he knew for sure that the killers should come today. The main character nevertheless decided to act, and he got up from the couch to demonstrate his skills. Turning to his rival, Luo Feng mentioned that he was not talented enough to write his own melody, so he would borrow Chu Chiu's melody. According to the enemy, this was simply impossible, since there is no way to play this melody again after hearing it just once. In this case, if Luo Feng could play at least one verse of the melody, then he would win, and he began to act. The young man began to play, but the melody was completely different from the one Chu Chiu had played earlier. Listening to this melody, the guests realized that it was completely different from the one Chu Chiu played. Only Chu Chiu realized that this guy was playing his melody backwards, even though he had only heard it once. In fact, not only Chu Chiu noticed this, but Vivi also realized that Luo Feng was playing the same melody backwards. This time luck was on the side of the protagonist, and Chu Chiu still admitted defeat. This event caused concern to the father of the family, since Luo Feng was still able to win, but by doing this he offended the Chu family. Meanwhile, the lights in all the rooms suddenly went out and people began to panic. The young man and Bebe began to explore the area in order to understand what was going on. As it turned out, the lights were turned off only because they were bringing out a birthday cake. The main character was not at a loss and began to sing the song Happy Birthday to You for Vivi. All the guests sang along and applauded, because with these competitions they completely forgot that Vivi was the main hero of the occasion, which is why they all gathered to sing a song and congratulate her. Hearing this song was a very pleasant event for the girl, because she was glad that so many people came to her birthday. The birthday girl started blowing out the candles on the cake to make a wish. But Bei was about to do something unpredictable, and began to get up from the sofa. Digging in her pocket, the girl began to take out something and came closer to Vivi. It turned out that there was a knife in her pocket, and Bei wanted to do something very horrible. Fortunately, someone stopped the enemy in time with his sword. It was Chu Chiu, because he noticed that Bei was trying to take Vivi's life. The young man did not understand at all what Agent Number 98 was doing, because his secret was sent to help her complete the task. But it was at that moment that he learned that Bei had probably betrayed all the agents. Bowing her head, the girl realized that Vivi was her friend, and she was doing something terrible. Considering Bei a traitor, Chu Chiu began to swing his sword in order to strike. "I'm trying to fight a girl." The guy sincerely hoped that she would die first. But Bei wanted to conduct the battle differently, and told Chu Chiu that if he wanted to kill her, then they should go to another room. Immediately after this, the two of them ran out of the main room and headed to another room. Once in the room, it was just the two of them, and no one here should have heard them. The fight began, and Chu Chiu wanted to do everything possible to destroy the agent, who turned out to be a traitor. The abilities of the two opponents were indeed impressive as they fought equally. Still, according to Chu Chiu, Agent Number 98 cannot be his opponent because she is too weak. Meanwhile, the main character finished playing the piano, and Vivi really appreciated this amazing melody. The guests asked Vivi to blow out the candles and make a wish, because it was their family tradition. Looking around, the birthday girl discovered that her friend was not nearby, because she wanted them to blow out the candles together. The boy assumed that Bei was on the top floor and decided to go check it out. And so that no one gets bored, Donghua suggested that everyone sing songs to make it more fun. The arrogant guy understood that he was higher than number 98 in the rating, and Bei was a much weaker opponent than him. The girl's willpower was simply excellent, and she still tried to resist as much as possible in order to not allow the enemy to win. Bei tried to strike with her knee, but Chu Chiu immediately blocked the girl's attack using his knee. This actually made her leg go numb, as if the opponent had bones made of steel, which was why it was no surprise that he was actually higher in the rankings. Laughing evilly, the young man could not believe that the enemy was capable of only this, and it seems that the organization was mistaken in sending her on such a mission. Soon after this, Bei decided to strike the villain so that he would finally shut up. The young man could not believe how this scoundrel dared to injure his precious face, which is why he began to attack. The impact occurred and Bei's weapon was completely destroyed as it could not withstand such crushing force. Suddenly, the main character noticed that Bei was fighting with a guy, and said that Vivi asked her to blow out the candles with her. This immediately angered the impudent man, and he asked the hero who he was and how he could sneak up so unnoticed. Hearing this question, Luo Feng immediately decided to find out whether Bei had really been sent to kill Vivi. The girl still admitted that this was indeed the case, but she could not kill her friend, even though she had plenty of opportunities throughout the day. The agent began to get even angrier, because he did not understand why such a nonentity as this guy was talking to him like that, and was going to kill him. Feeling hatred towards his enemies, the young man only exclaimed that he did not think so, and today only one person would die. And this person will be a scoundrel who wanted to finish off Vivi, but now he simply did not understand how he was killed in a few seconds. Not understanding how this was possible, Bei only watched everything that was happening and understood that Luo Feng had instantly killed a man who was in 86th place in the ranking of killers. Suddenly, the police burst into the room and ordered everyone to put their hands up and stay in their places. The boy and his ally raised their hands, and Luo Feng realized that he was seeing his friend. This acquaintance really didn't expect to see Luo Feng here, and thought that he had committed a crime. Because of this, the protagonist's old comrades arrested him for murder. Suddenly, the father of the family came and saw that Luo Feng had killed the killer who wanted to kill his daughter. Because of this, the father of the Zhen family decided to explain that this was just a misunderstanding, and Luo Feng was his hired bodyguard. But according to the man, bodyguards can also be assassins. This must be thoroughly investigated with all the rigor and necessary procedures, which is why they will check everyone. Hearing such an answer, the man could not believe these words, and was very surprised at this turn of events. But the main character at that moment was very upset, because now he would be detained. Luo Feng still began to resist, and said that he stopped the killer, and could not be the killer himself, but if they want to arrest him, then that's fine. In any case, he ordered the police to call their captain Peng Wei here to come now, because he wanted to ask him if all the people in his unit were so stupid. Dissatisfied policemen began to shout that if the young man did not want to be arrested, then they would start shooting, but the captain ordered them to stop. At that same moment, Captain Peng Wei came in and ordered all his men to put away their weapons. The boy began to explain to his captain that something was wrong in this case, and he suspected that the guy was to blame for everything. They needed to detain him and take him for interrogation. The captain at that moment looked at his old acquaintance and asked him to stop involving him in his problems. The grateful young man told Pei Wei that in that case he would leave all the problems so that he could solve them. The wise man decided to ask his subordinate if he knew the killer named Joe. Joe is British by nationality. He was recently wanted by 7 countries around the world, including the UK itself, on a list called the World Killing Star List. He was ranked 46th. This man was also involved in the kidnapping of young Miss Cheng, but has now been killed by another killer. The evil captain told all this only so that his subordinate would find the killer's employer within 7 days, because he had to be put in prison. Having frightened his ward, the commander ordered him to quickly return to his work, because now they had detained absolutely the wrong person. Watching the whole situation unfold, Bebe couldn't believe that Luo Feng ended up going unpunished. That's why the girls wanted to know how it all happened, because the guy in front of her had just killed a top killer, and it's obvious that that captain was helping him, but Luo Feng only replied that he was an ordinary schoolboy. Sighing heavily, Lady said that they should forget about it, because she does not know who the organization could send besides her, but she has had enough and leaves Vivi's protection in the hands of Luo Feng. But if something happens to Vivi, Bebe will take cruel revenge, although the hero understood that she could not do anything to him. Although the couple had animosity between each other, they still said goodbye and parted as friends. Some time later, events continued to occur at the Yongchun City News Bureau. The girl who was investigating the crime shouted to the editor-in-chief that she wanted to know what was going on here. Not understanding anything, the man decided to ask Jingmei what happened and why she was unhappy. It turned out that the girls had previously said that today's news headline would be the exposure of the dark deeds of the Black Fox Gang. Well, there was absolutely no mention of these crimes in the newspaper. That is why the dissatisfied Jingmei wanted to understand what exactly was happening in this editorial office and why they did this to her. The man initially didn't even know what to answer to this, and just started thinking. After which, he took out a certain envelope from the locker and began to make excuses. In this envelope was the girl's salary. This time it was a little more, and the boss also put her salary there for 3 months in advance. The newspaper boss said that Jingmei is not suitable for the role of a journalist, which is why she needs to take the money and leave the editorial office. Looking at the editor-in-chief, the girl immediately exclaimed that she wanted to get her flash drive with evidence back. To this, the editor-in-chief only replied that there are things that are better not to mess with. The additional 3-month salary was approved personally by the boss. He wants the girl to forget everything related to working for them. Snatching the money from the editor-in-chief's hands, Jingmei threw it right in his face to show that he was just a scoundrel. After all, even if the girl is dying of hunger, she still will not accept handouts from the villains, and will not stop turning a blind eye to their shameless actions. Turning around, the upset lady began to leave and said goodbye to the newspaper editorial office. Meanwhile, events continued to occur near the orphanage. Standing near the bridge, Jingmei thought about how her younger brothers and sisters would not be able to get new clothes from this house this month. This orphanage didn't even have air conditioning, which is why all the children will be very cold this winter. The determined lady at that moment realized that she would not lower her head, no matter what the trials of fate were, and would definitely allow her brothers and sisters to spend this winter happily. After several hours, events continued to occur in the Zheng family mansion. The whole family drank wine, and the father thanked Lo Feng for saving his daughter. The girl's mother also asked the young man to eat whatever he wanted and not be shy. The woman also remembered that she had previously heard that Luo Feng had only recently moved to their school, which is why she wanted to know which school he started at earlier. The kind boy exclaimed that he transferred from a school called M. This really surprised the woman, and she wanted to understand who Lo Feng's parents were, although she apologized that her family was not closed because of the questions, but she wanted to know absolutely everything about this guy. Hearing a question about the family, the hero immediately said that he was the only one in his family. This answer immediately made the woman feel awkward, and she apologized for such a question, but for the guy it was not a problem, because it no longer bothered him. Although the hero had one old man who looked after him all the time, all he gave him was nightmares. If the hero ever meets this old man again, he will definitely beat him half to death and take revenge for the past. The father of the Zheng family, in turn, said that Luo Feng had good skills, and offered to remain as a bodyguard for Vivi. The boy immediately refused such an offer, and suggested that the mister find someone else. Although the young man loved money, he no longer wanted to get involved in these family conflicts. The purposeful man exclaimed that he asked to protect Vivi for another month, and for each day he would pay 10,000 yuan. This proposal made the main character think seriously, because the salary was truly impressive. The father of the family also decided to mention that after today, there were some disagreements between him and the Chiu family, but fortunately, the man promised to help with this issue when necessary. At that moment, the young man realized that life without money was not easy, but he also did not want to get involved in trouble. Still, the boy agreed, but only for 1 month, because he couldn't stand it any longer. After a family dinner, Vivi decided to play the piano a little in order to relax after a hard day. The girl really played very skillfully and also sang beautifully. According to the young man, the song was really beautiful, and Vivi's performance was simply gorgeous. Suddenly, Vivi noticed that she was being watched and immediately stopped playing. Finished playing, Lady decided to thank the guy for today, and she hopes that she was not too late in thanking him. The joyful girl said that the young man had saved her twice already, and she was very grateful to him. The main character said that the first time it was just an accident, and today her father specifically hired him for protection, and this month he will save her as much as necessary. Although in any case, Vivi should obviously get into less trouble. Although this was indeed the case, Luo Feng would not be able to save her in this case. As it turned out, the father watched the dialogue taking place, and noticed that the young people got along well with each other, and his daughter hated the bodyguards most of all. But it seems this time it was completely the opposite, and she really liked the new bodyguard. At that very moment, the young lady felt that she was starting to feel dizzy and her condition was poor. Gradually, the girl began to lose consciousness, and the young man did not understand what the problem was, asking his father to immediately take her to the hospital. In fact, these were the consequences of an illness in childhood. Although they are not serious, for a long time my father invited medical experts from abroad. This happened every month, but to no avail. Turning to the man, Luo Feng offered to examine the girl, although in truth he also knows a little about medicine, but he can probably help. Having examined the girl, she immediately wanted to know what kind of diagnosis she had, but the hero only replied that this disease was not worth much worry. It's just that lady actually has a weak body, Chinese medicine can help her, and very soon she will be healthy. Hearing this, the man was immediately angry, because he had shown Vivi to more than 200 foreign doctors, and only Chinese medicine could help her. The father really couldn't believe what he heard. Luo Feng at that time insisted that medicine was now highly developed, and almost any disease could be cured. In order to help his classmate, the young man wrote several medications and asked to take them according to the prescription, once every 3 days, and in a month there would be no more dizziness. Having figured out this situation, the young man said that he was going to bed and decided to say goodbye. Looking at this boy, the man realized that he was too capable, and he was even scared to imagine who he really was. But Vivi herself was very embarrassed, and understood that Luo Feng was really just amazing. The next time, the man even thought about asking the guy to solve his problem in that place and try to have a second child. Walking home, the boy thought that as much as 10,000 yuan a day is just a dream, and apartment rent has also fallen in price, for which he can thank Sister Lan. As soon as he walked a little away from the mansion, he immediately noticed a noisy crowd nearby, and wanted to understand why so many people had gathered in one place. The crowd at that moment watched the restaurant, which was destroyed, and the broken windows attracted the attention of passers-by. Near the destroyed restaurant nearby, a girl was sitting on the floor, crying out of despair. Feeling very angry, the young man immediately wanted to achieve justice and understand who did it. Coming closer to the upset girl, the hero immediately wanted to understand whether a gang of black foxes had done this. In fact, all this just happened because of the woman's husband. The man was a fan of playing in a casino, and lost a lot of money, and then the thugs came to collect the debts, but she had no money. This was indeed impressive news, which made Luo Feng want to understand how much the woman owed these thugs. Continuing to cry, the lady explained that her husband owed the scoundrel another $500,000. Although they tried to hide, they found them. They were even going to cut off her husband's hand as punishment. After listening to the woman, the young man decided to find out what she was going to do in this situation. The determined lady realized that she no longer wanted to endure this and would quickly divorce her husband, because she no longer wanted to get into such trouble because of him. The hero thought about the fact that in almost every family there are similar stories, and perhaps it is better to leave everything as it is. A few hours later, the event continued to occur in the apartment, where Lo Feng returned. Upon entering the apartment, the boy discovered some strange noise that came from another room. Teacher June was lying on the floor, and it was completely unclear what had happened to her. Coming closer to the teacher, the boy wanted to understand if everything was okay with her, and what exactly happened. The situation was very strange, since she was unconscious, but her pulse was fine, and there seemed to be no reason to worry too much. Taking the girl in his arms, the young man realized that it was necessary to carry her to bed, since lying on the floor was not very good. Suddenly, the woman opened her eyes, and did not understand what was happening here, and why she was being carried somewhere. Feeling intense shame and anger, the art teacher slapped her student in the face with all her might. Soon after, she became embarrassed and explained that she seemed to have lost consciousness, and when she woke up, she saw him and did something she didn't want to do, which is why she began to apologize. Experiencing severe pain after the slap, the hero nevertheless forgave her because he was already used to it. The teacher also said that the mock exam test would start tomorrow, and as her apology, perhaps she would help him prepare for it, and could help him not only with her subject, but with the others too. According to Mimi, the guy really needed help in preparation, but he only replied that he could calmly cope with such tasks. Having asked the girl not to worry, the main character said that tomorrow she should expect only good news. The next day, events continued to happen in class, and Tang Dai asked his friend if he was sure that he could pass the exam. Luo Feng convinced his friend that he could do it easily. Meanwhile, the teacher announced that the students will receive practice exam tests and everyone needs to stop talking and start writing. In truth, the hero was a little nervous, but since he said that he would pass the exam, he was going to keep his word. After the exam, each of the students was incredibly tired, because it was really difficult. Nevertheless, the comrade invited Lo Feng to go home with him, but the young man refused, and then said that he had some business. Classmates began to think that Luo Feng was probably hiding something, as if he was trying to go on a date with a girl. Suddenly, Vivi and her little sister shouted for Luo Feng to go home with them. It was at that moment that all classmates realized that the guy, who is a simple schoolboy, was dating two school flowers at once. It was as if he was blessed by heaven. A few hours later, the event continued to occur in the city at night. Vivi began to get out of the expensive car, and she was met by the butler Donghua. Addressing the girls, the hero said that he delivered them home safe and sound, after which he needed to return to his house. Looking at her bodyguard, the girl mentioned that he might not walk, but she would simply ask the driver to take her home. The slightly embarrassed young man replied that it was not worth it, and he just wanted to take a little walk, and they could see each other tomorrow. In fact, Lu Mei was very angry at this behavior and did not understand why Vivi was trying to please this guy. The hero refused, because he had relaxed a little in recent days, and he needed to keep himself in good physical shape. Jogging was ideal for this. Suddenly, some girl overtook Luo Feng and began to run much faster. Looking at this girl, the boy immediately assumed that she has good speed, perhaps she even studies at some kind of sports school, and she also has a good figure in the back. At that same second, the mysterious lady turned around, as if she had heard what was being said about her. This even confused Law a little, because he did not expect that the stranger would pay attention to him. After a few seconds, the girl slowed down completely, as if she specifically wanted to run along with the guy, and her figure in front was also disgusting. Thus, the young man revealed that this girl was really trying to keep herself in shape. Unexpectedly, the lady asked if the guy not far from her was really Luo Feng. He didn't even know how to answer that. A little embarrassed, he still said that this was indeed so, but did not understand how she knew his name. The green-haired girl in turn asked if Luo Feng really didn't know her. The boy could not understand why he should know some girl, because he just wanted to compete a little with her in speed, but the stranger asked him not to be so arrogant. Hearing about the arrogance, Luo Feng did not understand at all why the girl said this, and began to feel awkward. Meanwhile, a man passed not far from the couple. The scoundrel was holding a knife in his hands, and was very glad that he met schoolchildren who were walking on a date in a dark alley at night. It turned out that the bandit was not alone, and he decided to tell the girl not to worry, because they are ordinary robbers, not rapists or murderers, because of which they just want to get money, and the couple will be free. Looking at these men, the young man exclaimed that he did not really understand what they were talking about, but they looked really impressive. This answer made the scoundrels laugh, and they began to laugh angrily, as if they wanted to commit some terrible act. The boy immediately stopped the bandits and asked if they really wanted to get the money, because he just ran out for an evening jog and didn't take anything with him. This answer immediately outraged the bandits, and they began to claim that they were knights partners from the Yellow River. Suddenly, the girl exclaimed that a year ago, out of nowhere, the bandits, called knights, came out, each with several significant cases of theft hanging on them, but the worst thing is, the female robbery victim, everyone was defamed, which is why she did not expect that this time the man will not be left without attention. A little shy, the main character exclaimed that this was his first time, and they should approach this matter with all responsibility. Feeling incredible anger, the bandit shouted that the girl had crossed the line and he would kill her now. Previously, the bandit had no plans to kill at all, but the stranger simply pissed him off, which is why he wanted to commit a crime. Looking at the bandit, the young man was already about to counterattack, and was preparing to carry out a strike. But at that very second, the unfamiliar girl hit the bastard right in the face with her foot with all her might. According to the boy, this was indeed a little unexpected, but he was glad that the girl could stand up for herself. The lady exclaimed that the police were looking for scoundrels everywhere, but they didn't dare to come out, and they would have been better off immediately confessing to the police station. I'm trying to get to my feet. The bandit realized that this girl is a samurai with a visible enhancement of the 3rd degree, and he won't be able to cope with her. The statement about the samurai made the boy think, because teacher June had previously told him that in this city there were many followers. Upon reaching a certain level of strength, they could become samurai, and it turns out that the visible strengthening of the 3rd degree is also a level. Having stopped his thoughts, the hero nevertheless realized that he must definitely help the girl. But she didn't need help, since she was easily able to beat up the bandits. The stranger was too cool, and she was only taking away Luo Feng's screen time. The brave lady asked the young man to call the police, because she saw that he was just standing and watching what was happening. Some time later, the police arrived and the pair of robbers were finally handed over to the judicial authorities. Kind police officers thanked the couple for their contribution to the community and asked them to stop by to give oral evidence during their free time. Looking at the girl, the hero couldn't even imagine that she was so cool, and asked her to introduce herself. The smart girl asked the young man to return to school so that he could personally find out what her name was. Soon after, the stranger simply began to run away, causing Luo Feng to not even recognize her name or understand what 3rd degree enhancement was. The next day, events continued to happen at school, and the boy really wanted to know what the name of that same girl was. Looking around, the young man could not understand what Odnoklas Niki were talking so hard about. Suddenly, Tang Dai ran up and asked his brother to accept his bow. The hero sincerely did not understand what was going on, and decided to ask his friend to explain in human terms what exactly happened. It turned out that the head girl was passing by and had already told them everything. This time Luo Feng is the hope of the whole school, and later one important event will be announced in class. The unflappable brother who has the best grades in the entire school and doesn't flaunt them, and perhaps Luo Feng will soon become the first to become the 5th handsome man of the school. But this news really surprised the young man, because he did not expect that he would be able to become the 5th handsome man of the school. The protagonist's admiring companion only nodded his head, as he was truly impressed by Luo Feng. After thinking a little, the boy finally decided to find out what this title actually gives and why he would be given it. I was suddenly shocked by such questions and didn't understand why Feng didn't know about such an important title. According to tradition, the school selects the most beautiful students, school flowers, 8 girls and 4 boys. The 4 main handsome men in Lublino already have more than half of the girls, and perhaps brother Lo Fong will become the 5th. Having heard the information about the 8 flowers, the young man immediately decided to ask if there was a girl in this group who fought very well. The comrade immediately decided to think, could there be such a girl in the group of 8 flowers? After all, he had never thought about this before. There was even Lu Mei in this group, who had incredible beauty and charisma. The friend immediately began to list that the first of the beauties, the gifted Qianilan, was more delicate than a flower. The likelihood of mastering martial arts was close to 0. There was also another girl named Sun Daiyin. She had a beautiful figure, but most likely she also did not know how to fight. Listening to stories about girls, the young man could not stand it and asked the guy to stop, because the lesson would begin soon. Arriving at the class, the teacher said that today he had good news for all the students. A student from their class, Lo Fong, passed the trial exam better than anyone, and in the future all students should take an example from him. Classmates immediately began to discuss that the main character is really very cool, and 4 handsome guys need to be re-elected. Anyway, a crowd of girls will surround him after the bell rings from class. Because of this, the young man began to feel awkward, because if he had known that everything would turn out this way, he would have tried not to be so noticeable, otherwise unnecessary troubles might arise. Soon the lesson ended, and the hero only thought that under no circumstances should a girl be forced to take the first step, and this time, he would speak to her first. Approaching Vivi, Luo Feng decided to find out if she was going home, and the slightly embarrassed girl replied that she would indeed be heading home now. At that same second, a friend distracted the boy and asked him to move away so that they could talk. It turned out that they had some kind of unexpected situation, and Tang Dai handed his friend some kind of envelope. It turned out that it was a love note from Song Daiyin, who wrote that when the moon rose higher, the two would meet at dusk, at 6 p.m., in the gazebo by the lotus pond. The sisters immediately began to discuss among themselves some news that shocked them greatly. Lu Mei said that one of the school flowers wrote a love note to Luo Feng, although she didn't know who exactly, but there is no doubt that she has a rival in love, which is why Vivi needs to be pushed. Confused even more, the lady asked her friend not to talk nonsense, because she thought that she had no competitors. Laughing, Lu Mei only asked her friend not to regret later that she had not realized it in time. Tang Dai at the same time told the main character that Song Daiyin is Miss School. She is the best fantasy of all the guys, and she has long legs, as well as an incredible figure. In fact, the guy didn't care at all about this, and he asked his friend to pass this note instead of him. This made my friend cry, because if he had done the best in his exams and was handsome, he would definitely never have missed this opportunity. Soon the young man and Vivi were preparing to go home, and did not even suspect what would happen next. It turned out that bandits would be waiting for Lo Feng, right near the exit from the school. The dissatisfied scoundrels wanted to take revenge on the young man for what he had previously done to them. They began to smile and clap for the scoundrel, because they realized that this was the same Lo Feng who would be the 5th handsome boy of the school, and did not want to put up with it. Even if the bastard has to ask the director so that Luo Feng is not the 5th, they will do it, but first, they wanted to teach him a lesson so that he would not become arrogant, because Boss Huang is on their side, and they have nothing to fear. Looking at this gang, the young man realized that he had already met with them before, but fortunately, they should not take up much of his time. Although these bandits made a lot of noise, they were still quite easy to deal with, since they were all weaklings. Having calmed Vivi a little, the hero asked her to wait, because he was going to deal with the bandits. Having started to warm up, the boy asked the bandits whether to deal with them quickly, or to delay time a little, because it seemed that there were only stupid people there who could only threaten. Looking at these faces, the hero even began to think that they probably already know what awaits them. But perhaps they still had some kind of plan that they wanted to stick to in order to defeat Luo Feng. Probably there really was a plan, because someone stood nearby and watched everything that was happening. This observer was Director Huang Doyang, who wanted to watch the fight. Thus, the boy guessed that if he beat the hooligans now, the director would catch him and accuse him of mass beatings. After which, the hero exclaimed that he was sorry to upset the villains, but their pathetic plan was visible right through. he didn't even need to do anything to send them to the hospital. The most muscular guy started shouting that Luo Feng shouldn't be so self-confident, because he doesn't have the strength to deal with everyone. The smart young man only exclaimed that if the hooligans don't start, then he will start the battle, and before they even blink an eye, they will end up on Earth. Suddenly, someone started screaming and asking what was going on here. It turned out that it was the teacher who had previously asked Luo Feng to come to her office after school, and it was completely unclear what he was doing here. The friendly young man greeted the teacher and said that the hooligans were not allowing him to pass and were preventing him from carrying out the teacher's instructions. The dissatisfied woman began to ask the hooligans what they were doing here, because the lessons were already over, and they still had not left, and if they dare to offend the new students, then they would have to deal with the management, who would instantly expel them from the school. Feeling afraid because of the teacher, the rascals immediately said that they were leaving now, and before that they were just chatting together. Teacher June warned the main character that all these hooligans have parents with money and status, and she can only intimidate them a little, so you need to be careful. Thus, the problem was solved, and he and Vivi could return home. Meanwhile, events took place somewhere at the school, in one of the classrooms. The villains were sorting things out among themselves. The muscular guy hit the other, because he was supposed to detain the teacher, but for some reason he could not do this. The beaten partner in crime began to make excuses to Mr. Gon, saying that he himself did not expect, but he has another plan to crush Luo Feng. This plan was that Luo Feng's only friend is Tang Dai. He is nothing of himself, which is why they can start with him and show him that they should not be messed with. The bandits immediately realized that it was a really great idea to start with a friend who would not be able to resist during a fight. The bandits were simply very annoyed that the main character was constantly surrounded by beauties, and this irritated them very much. Meanwhile, events continued to occur near the lake, where the beauty invited Luo Feng. The girl was very upset because the young man did not come at her invitation, and she was going to remind him of this in the future. Sometime later, events continued to occur in Tang Dai's house. The friend's father and the main character were drinking. The man was very happy to spend time with such a good guy. I turned to my son. His father asked him to go get a couple more bottles, because he and Lo Feng will definitely not return home sober. The guy didn't mind at all, and said that he would soon have a few more bottles of beer. The main character immediately got down to business and decided to ask the man if he called him this time to tell him something. As it turned out, this was indeed the case. For several days he continued continuous surveillance, and finally was able to overhear their shameless plan, and they were already crossing all boundaries. The young man could wait no longer and asked the man to tell him about this plan as quickly as possible. It turned out that Zhang Tehong, together with the Black Foxes, under the guise of developing the real estate industry, were carrying out child trafficking scams. This made the guy micro-angry, and he hit the table with his fist with all his might. Soon after this, he decided to ask Mr. if they had any more evidence. The man said that the black people had recently acquired a new product and were presumably preparing to close the deal in the next couple of days. Now no one will give them the opportunity to achieve their goal. At that very second, the man noticed that his son had been gone for a long time, and their drinking was over. At that moment, Tang Dai was in trouble and was already being talked to by hooligans. The scoundrels noticed that this big-eared guy had become arrogant lately, and still decided to sign up as their enemy. That is why the impudent people wanted to teach the guy a couple of lessons, so that he would not become impudent. The frightened young man immediately decided to find out from the hooligans what they wanted from him, because he could not understand anything. The impudent one noticed that it seems that by always following Lo Feng, the guy has already gained a stronger ego, and they want to check which is stronger, him or the brick. Trying to get out of such a difficult situation, Tang Dai ordered the scoundrels to let him go, otherwise brother Luo Feng would take revenge on them. The bully did not listen to the guy, and with all his strength he hit the young man straight in the face with a brick. The impudent guy was very infuriated that the name of this fool was mentioned, because sooner or later he would get to him. From such a strong blow, Tang Dai hit the wall, and he was in great pain. Trying to get up, the boy just wanted to say the name of his comrade so that he would come to his aid. All this time the scoundrels mocked him, and told him to scream harder, because no one would hear him. As soon as the bully came closer, the young man immediately struck, because he wanted to take revenge for the way he was treated. Thanks to Luo Feng, Tang Dai will believe in himself and will never become a pathetic coward again. This behavior on the part of the guy only encouraged the hooligans, and they immediately wanted to brutally beat him. The fight began, and unfortunately, the weak boy was defeated, since the enemies were much stronger. This made it very difficult for Tang Dai to fight, but he did not want to give up and continued to resist. Some time later, events continued to occur in the hospital. The doctors thought that the patient had only a short time left, and they were going to provide him with emergency care. Initially, the doctors needed to contact the patient's relatives, but the guy's phone was broken and he needed help immediately. At that moment, the doctor only replied that he also sympathizes with the victim, but he thinks that they will cure him, but he will not be able to pay. No one will be able to pay him for this loss. Suddenly, someone shouted to immediately prepare the operating room for emergency care. Dr. Jiang shouted this because she didn't care about the money at all, and she only wanted to save the patients. The arrogant doctor only asked the girl to wait, because in his opinion it was against the rules. The lady was not primarily thinking about money, or about what was right, but about the fact that she was a doctor. Now a human life is at stake, and she cannot calmly watch as life slips out of her hands. If the worst happens, she will take full responsibility upon herself. Immediately thereafter, the operating room was closed and life-saving surgery began. The bastard just sighed heavily and saw that the arriving doctor was showing off, and he didn't like it very much. The guy's father was already starting to worry, because more than an hour had passed, and his son had disappeared somewhere, and the phone was also turned off. Well, as soon as the phone rang, the joyful father immediately decided to ask his son where he had gone. At that very second, he was told upsetting news, which is why the man was scared. The main character immediately noticed his father's reaction and wanted to understand what happened to his friend. While preparing to go to the hospital, the father exclaimed that Luo Feng urgently needed to go with him because Tang Dai had been severely beaten. Some time later, the woman stood in front of the director, and he told her that he had nothing against the fact that she was saving people's lives, but she also needed to take the money allotted for it. The man also believed that this time, at first glance, it is even obvious that this is a poor student who has no money, and yet the hospital budget also cannot be spent so carelessly. Addressing the director, the woman exclaimed that we were talking about human life, and she was confident that he could deduct everything related to money from her salary. These words made the director laugh, because there is nothing left to deduct, because the doctor's salary has been completely spent, and she may no longer continue the operation, since she will be fired. The doctor was only happy with this outcome of events, because he understood that the girl did not know how to think about the consequences, and in the future he advised her not to repeat her mistakes. At that same second, someone threw several wads of cash, which flew straight towards the doctor. A bunch of money hit the villain right in the face, who was simply shocked by this turn of events. No one could believe that they could pay for an ordinary student to perform an operation and cure him. It turned out that the main character threw away the money and ordered the director to urgently take treatment in order to cure Tang Dai. The young man ordered to cure his friend, because if you do not do this, then he will not be so kind later. The arrogant doctor also did not tolerate this, and decided to find out from the guy who he was and how he dared to insult him. The guy's father also convinced the doctor that this was his only son, and he literally begged to save him. According to the director, the money was too little, and he did not understand why everyone was so noisy, as if they knew where they were and did not respect their elders. That is why the arrogant director called his guards so that they would take the arrogant visitors out of here. The frightened father began to insist that they had misunderstood everything and it was just a misunderstanding. And the determined young man called his boss and said that he urgently needed money for one thing, and decided to find out how much cash he could give. The boss immediately replied that he could give 1 million or more, because he, like the great Zheng Gatian, can help in any matter. No one expected such an answer, and everyone was simply shocked, because they did not even think that a simple guy knew such an influential person. Even the director couldn't believe that this student had just talked to multimillionaire Zheng Gatian. Absolutely everyone understood that it was without a doubt the voice of Zheng Gatian. After all, they had recently heard him on TV, and they also said that he was the investor of this hospital. In this case, if there were no more problems, the boy asked to continue the operation. The director was immediately delighted and asked everyone to get to work, because it was just a small misunderstanding. Also, the alarmed boss asked the doctor to definitely use the best medicine, because they could not allow the death of the patient. That is why the doctor asked the boss to be confident, because he put saving lives and patients first. Meanwhile, the main character approached the woman and asked her if she was Tang Dai's attending physician. This was indeed the case, and the boy immediately bowed to the doctor, telling her to continue the operation. The bald man said that Jiang is really a good choice. Despite her young age, she doesn't have much experience in medicine. Absolutely no one listened to the man, and everyone immediately left the office. At the same time, the doctor began to doubt that this beggar really knew Zhang Gaitian. According to the director, this cannot be asked, since they could not get proof now. If this guy really knew the multimillionaire, then the hospital would already be closed. Some time later, the doctor left the office and said that the patient's condition had stabilized and they could visit him, but they should not force him to talk too much. The alarmed father immediately decided to find out from his son who beat him so badly. The boy immediately said that these were Huang Lao's people, and he told his friend that this time he was not such a coward, and fought to the end like a real man. The hero was very upset by this, because he realized that these scoundrels were crossing all boundaries. He didn't care if they attacked him, but if they attacked his friends, then let them not be surprised at his anger. The guy was about to go and take revenge, but the doctor suddenly stopped him, saying that it would be a rash act, and if he does wrong, then something may happen to him, because of which he will pay. The young man only insisted that his classmates suffered through his fault, and he could not turn a blind eye to it. The hero also hinted to the director that he had a good reason not to involve the police in this, and nothing would happen to him. Grabbing the bat, Luo Feng exclaimed that he was leaving the doctor to look after his patient, while a friend will take revenge for his classmate who suffered as a result of a gang attack. As it turned out, the doctor had been listening to the conversation all this time, and realized that the guy was studying in Zijing, and he had connections there, and he wanted to check something. And some time later, the doctor came to the director and said that the guy was just a simple poor student. With absolute confidence, the man said that he has people in the Zijing school, and there is no way this guy can have $1 million, and he is clearly hiding something. In any case, the director believed that it was necessary to use the best equipment and medicine to treat Tang Dai, no matter if he had money, but they needed to give him a huge bill. The father stood over his son all this time and literally begged him to get better quickly and get well. The doctor came, and since the patient's family agreed, she was going to give him the vaccine. But then an arrogant man came out and asked the doctor to stop. The scoundrel told Mr. Ten that the money he brought today had already run out, and to continue the treatment he needed to make the next payment. The father immediately took out the money, but unfortunately he only had 500 yuan, and he immediately handed it to the doctor. 500 yuan was not enough, since one day in this ward costs more than 20,000, and one vaccination more than 3,000. At this rate, they will not soon be able to pay the entire amount. Feeling dissatisfied with the doctor, the man began to claim that they first needed to cure his son, and he would find a way to return the entire amount. The girl also claimed that the patient's condition is terrible. If they don't give him medicine now and discharge him, then this action will have serious consequences. A crowd of people gathered not far from the office, and they watched the arrogant doctor, because he only thought about profit and did not care about the life of the patient. Passing by the chamber, the director, along with his bodyguards, shouted to the crowd to leave, because they need to follow the rules and the law, and they work according to regulations. Not being able to tolerate such an attitude towards the patient, the girl ordered him not to touch him, because this was her patient, and as she said, so it would be. The director at that moment shouted that he was her boss, and if he says to discharge the patient, then so be it, and since the girl does not want to follow his instructions, then she can get out along with her precious patient. The bodyguards immediately headed towards the girl in order to kick her out of the hospital. At that moment, someone shouted to the bandits to stop. It turned out that Director Su had arrived and was clearly unhappy with what was happening here. The alarmed bald man didn't understand what Director Su was doing here. He came with an inspection, and didn't even warn him, because then he would have been met in person. The man immediately decided to find out from Chief Chiu what was happening here and why he was so noisy. Feeling a strong sense of shame, the bald scoundrel only said that it was nothing special, the usual hospital fuss, and it would be better for them to go to his office and drink tea. But then the director said that he didn't come for that, and he had more important things to do than tea, which is why he wanted to get to Nurse Jiang Xiaoxue. Rubbing his hands, the scoundrel said that this doctor would soon be fired, and there was nothing to worry about. These words made Director Xiao nervous, and he decided to ask why the girl was being fired. At that same second, the girl arrived and told the director that she hoped that the hospital would be able to understand the patient's situation and give him more time to recover, and not throw him out onto the street. The dissatisfied man immediately decided to ask the bald man if he wanted to explain what happened here. Other doctors said that this Chu Kai is just a snob, and there is no money, he immediately drives patients away, and has never taken human life into account. Turning to the doctors, the vile man ordered them to shut up and stop talking nonsense. In fact, Director Su came here solely at Mr. Zheng's request. After all, earlier he was asked to transfer money by Madame Jiang for the treatment of a patient. The woman immediately accepted the suitcase, because she understood that this was payment for Tang Dai's treatment. At that moment, the arrogant director and his assistant could not believe that Luo Feng really knew the multimillionaire Zheng Gaitian. The director also did not forget to mention that he would have to conduct a thorough inspection and check whether they had disgraced his hospital. At these words, the men completely fell to the floor, because they understood that in this way they would be deprived of their jobs. Even the doctor didn't understand who Luo Feng was, since Director Su himself came to donate money to the hospital. Hearing this question, the man only replied that the young man was just an ordinary schoolboy. Meanwhile, events took place in one of the city's cafes, where strangers were having a barbecue. As it turned out, the scoundrels were discussing that they had beaten Tang Dai like a little pig. The main character clearly did not like this discussion, and he decided to butt into the conversation in order to restore justice. The bandits clearly did not expect that their strongest opponent would arrive to punish them. After some time, the scoundrels found themselves at a construction site, and their hands were tied. The hero decided to find out if these men really belonged to Wan Laod's gang, and this was indeed the case. In order to restore justice, the young man decided to find out how many attackers there were when Tang Dai was beaten. The scoundrels didn't want to say anything at all, even though they would beat them to death, because they weren't going to give up their brother. Swinging the bat, the boy realized that they were close with their partner, and if he continued to beat them, then perhaps they would finally move forward. In order to further scare the hooligans, the young man hit the concrete structure with all his might, causing it to literally begin to fall apart. The young man also decided to mention that he had previously heard that if a finger bone is ground into powder, then no medicine can restore it. However, he is not sure whether he has enough strength for this. Because of such statements, the bandits were simply terrified, and they understood that if they did not speak, it would be very bad for them. The scoundrel, who was conscious, said that there were 10 of them in total, and they were all in the abandoned AI Lumao market. Thus, the young man realized that it was Huang Laod again, and he had already said that if he was attacked, he would laugh, but since the bandit dared to touch his friend, he would simply kill him. Nevertheless, the hero decided to spare the 2 scoundrels and left them at the construction site. Although they were tied up, they remained alive. A few hours later, the event continued to take place in an abandoned market, where the main character arrived to restore justice. The main bandit was glad that Lo Feng had finally come, because he had been waiting for him for a long time, and his guys were starting to get bored. It turned out that the boss specially prepared 100 people in order to finally destroy the young man. There really were a lot of bandits, just an incredible number, much more than 10 people. According to the main character, it made no difference whether there were 10 ants or 100, since they could all be trampled at once. After which, the boss announced that the one who can kill Lo Feng will become his deputy, as well as an honorary member of the gang. None of the opponents fully understood how much power this guy with the bat had. The hero easily managed to fight off each opponent, and they couldn't even get close. The master of bat control was in action and batted very well during many attacks. The enemies even approached from behind, but this did not bother the young man at all, and he easily continued the battle. Some of the enemies seemed much stronger than the guy himself, but at the same time he still continued to compete with them. Watching everything that was happening, the convoy even began to get nervous, because they saw that Luo Feng was doing quite well. Taking out a knife, the scoundrel exclaimed that the guy shouldn't even hope to leave here alive, because in the end, one direct blow from the knife would be enough. After several minutes of battle, the boy was again surrounded on all sides, and it seemed that he could no longer win. Smiling maliciously, the bandit exclaimed for the allies to kill Luo Feng. Everyone immediately began to take out their huge knives in order to complete the battle that had begun. No matter how tough the enemy is, he still won't be able to dodge so many knives. Starting to be serious, the young man exclaimed that he just wanted to teach his enemies a lesson, but it looks like he will have to resort to more radical methods. To his opponents, he was just an arrogant scoundrel, and they would only need a hit to win. Having started waving their knives, the bandits hoped that they would now easily win this battle. But no one could have expected what happened next, since the scoundrels had never seen anything like this before. The hero literally disappeared, and the bandits no longer saw him, as if he had teleported somewhere. It turned out that the young man was so fast that he could move behind his opponent in a matter of seconds, and wanted to show how to really kill. Turning around, the opponent didn't even see the hero, and began to get nervous because he only heard his voice from behind. Immediately after this, the bandits began to scream, not understanding what was happening, because some of their legs began to give out, as if they had been severely beaten. One by one the villains continued to scream as they were in incredible pain. The hero was so fast that his opponents simply did not see him while he was attacking. Feeling anxious, even Boss realized that Luo Feng was probably not a real person, but some kind of demon. Starting to panic, the main bandit realized that he urgently needed to leave here. It was already too late, as the hero noticed that the enemy was leaving and did not give him the opportunity to do so. Feeling murderous, Luo Feng still decided to ask why the scoundrel dared to beat Tang Dai. Without answering this question, the boss only told his assistants to stop shouting and kill this guy quickly. Starting to smile evilly, the young man asked Wan to look around, because it seemed that he had no one else to talk to. The excited enemy quickly moved away in order to look at his allies. What he saw was simply amazing, since Luo Feng was able to defeat absolutely everyone. Now Wan could not understand how this happened. After all, so many people were beaten, and everyone was defeated, because of which it is not clear who this guy is. Because Huang's gang offended Luo Feng, he can forgive them, but for what they did to Tang Dai, he was going to send them all to intensive care. Greatly frightened, Wan knelt down and began to beg for mercy, since he did not know who exactly he was dealing with. The man had previously been ordered to attack Tang Dai, and it was gone men, because he would not dare to act on his own, and now he was in the office on elective. Having struck his enemy with all his might, the young man warned him, saying that this was his last chance to improve, and if there was such a provocation again, he would simply kill him. Some time later, events continued to happen in class. A conscientious student named Gon answered the teacher, and he praised him for answering well. Suddenly, someone literally burst into the office and broke down the door. It was the main character who immediately greeted the teacher. Feeling dissatisfied, the boy decided to find out whether Gon Men was in this class. Looking at the door, the man could not believe that it flew off from an ordinary kick. The dissatisfied Gon immediately decided to turn to Luo Feng in order to ask how he dared to break in while the lesson was going on, and whether he really didn't know about his passion for learning. Raising his hand, the boy immediately said that he had a stomach ache and was about to go to the toilet. Other students also began to raise their hands to leave the office. A lot of guys were about to come out to deal with the young man, since he had clearly crossed the line. There really were a large number of enemies against the main character. There were actually many more of them. Luo Feng shouted that no one dares to touch his friends, and those of them who did this should take a step forward, the rest can leave before it's too late. Such statements were quite funny for the hooligans. After all, they had been planning to finish off Luo Feng for a long time, but never had the opportunity, and then he himself came. Still, the boy was ready for the battle, and asked to start it as quickly as possible, since he still had a night snack waiting for him. Soon after this, the enemy began to run straight towards the guy with incredible speed, about to strike. Having dodged the attack, the hero saw that the enemy had a lot of muscles not just for show. Gon Na just said that these are all the results of his daily training, and now he will show his true power. In order to win this battle as quickly as possible, the enemy began to strike multiple blows, but this was a completely useless exercise, since the young man turned out to be much more dexterous. After a short battle, the boy realized that it was time to teach his enemy a little lesson. The enemy at first did not understand what other lesson he would receive, to which Lo Feng replied that it would be a lesson in traditional medicine. About to make another blow from behind, the scoundrel had absolutely no idea what the hell traditional medicine was. But while he was making the blow, for some reason he suddenly froze and could not even move. The allies could not understand what was happening, and asked their boss to launch an attack. Without making a single accurate blow, the enemy literally began to fall, although he was not even beaten. Now Gon was completely helpless, and could not pose any competition, since he could not even move from his place. Other hooligans could not understand what happened to their brother, and began to encourage him, saying that the fight was not over yet. When the enemy knelt down, he literally began to tear apart from pain that he had never experienced before. For the hero, this sight was quite funny, because he understood that the battle would be over and he would win it. Having finally fallen to the floor, with the last of his strength gone, wanted to understand what exactly Lo Feng had done to him. According to the guy, there was nothing special about this, he just pressed some acupuncture points, and now the enemy will be disabled for about 6 months. Feeling very angry, the enemy could not understand how Luo Feng dared to do this to him. In fact, the hero believed that Gon should be grateful to him, because if this was a real fight, he would have made minced meat out of him and fed it to the dogs. Even the bandits' allies were afraid to approach such a dangerous guy, because he could cripple them too. That is why each of the scoundrels began to retreat, and literally begged the young man to let them go. Meanwhile, the teacher broke off and observed everything that was happening on the roof of the building. Looking at the teacher, the young man immediately assumed that he was not worried about Tang Dai's fate. Feeling great fear, the teacher began screaming to call an ambulance quickly. Gon was seriously injured. Sighing after a difficult battle, the young man only thought that he could not kill his enemies, but he taught them a noble lesson. Teacher June also came to the roof and wanted to understand what was happening here, because in her opinion, Lo Feng committed a crime, because of which he could go to prison. The young man only replied that the teacher should not worry, because nothing would happen to him, and also thanked her for her concern. Some girl was waiting for the hero not far from the exit, and saw how he coolly dealt with the bandits, although earlier she thought that he was a weakling. Then the hero recognized his interlocutor, and did not want to play games with her anymore by guessing her name. Then the girl decided to introduce herself, saying that her name was Qianilan, and she passed the exam better than anyone after Luo Feng. Waving the lady with his hand, the boy said that she did well, but there is nothing to be proud of here, next time she will be better, and they are unlikely to have a chance to compete again. These statements caused dissatisfaction among the interlocutor, because she wanted to honestly defeat the guy in the next exam. The hero still decided to have a little snack after a difficult battle, because he realized that he had spent a lot of energy today. Looking at the boy, the woman noticed that something must have happened to him, since he looked quite terrible. To this, Luo Feng only said that everything was fine with him, and also handed over several wads of money, then saying that this payment was for rent. The owner of the establishment was really very glad that everything was fine with the guy, and that he was regularly paying the rent. The hungry boy thought about being given one more day, because he still had one unfinished business waiting for him. The next day, events continued to occur at school. The school director was very dissatisfied and wanted to understand what had happened to them, that all this resulted in a big scandal. The alarmed teacher explained to the director that it was just a simple student, and in which school fights don't happen. For the indignant man, this was a bad argument because this simple student sent 50 students to the hospital. It was then that the teacher revealed that it was all Luo Feng's fault and they only needed to expel him to keep everyone else happy. The angry principal did not understand why this black sheep was still in their school, because it was time to expel him long ago. Suddenly, someone shouted that he did not agree that Luo Feng should be expelled. It was teacher June, and she said that this time Luo Feng passed the trial exam the best. From this we can conclude that he is a genius, and they cannot make such hasty decisions. Exception is only an extreme case. Another teacher was against this, because from the moment this student was transferred to their school, they had nothing but problems, and it was better to expel him instead of dealing with all the parents of the affected students. According to June, if Luo Feng is excluded, then there will be many other schools that will only be happy to take him in, they will even beg him to come to them. Taking a deep breath, the director agreed to talk to Luo Feng's parents to see what they would say and then make a decision. June understood that she had only won one day, and there was still a chance to avoid elimination. Meanwhile, Vivi was at home, and someone called her on her mobile phone. The interlocutor told some news that greatly surprised the girl. The lady immediately ran into her father's office because she wanted to tell him something. Not understanding anything, the father just watched his daughter, and decided to find out what had happened. Trying to calm his daughter down, the man tried to find out what happened, and then Vivi said that Luo Feng was in trouble and needed to help him. Continuing to reassure his daughter, the elderly man asked her to calm down and explain everything, because he knows that Luo Feng is a good person, and he will help him in any way he can. At the same time, events continued to occur in the hospital, where the protagonist's friend was still located. Those injured as a result of the school conflict were also transferred to this hospital. The main character immediately noticed that all the victims were brought to the same hospital as Tang Dai. It seems that now he will clearly have companions. The young man also decided to check on his comrade, and he was really very glad that they had not forgotten about him. The joyful father said that all this was only thanks to the work of Doctors Jiang, although Dai's regenerative abilities were also nothing. The boy was really happy to hear this. He also said that he had successfully avenged Tang Dai, and if he listened to the sounds outside, he could hear the sound together. Feeling awkward, his father pointed out that they were probably causing a bit of trouble for Luo Feng. After leaving the office, Feng asked the man to leave the office in order to talk a little. The hero decided to tell the man that this time he sent at least 50 people to the hospital, and he definitely couldn't avoid problems. Taking advantage of the time he has, he wants to finish off Huang Tong. If the man has any clues, then he must report them right now. After thinking a little, the father remembered that today at dawn, the enemy will have a meeting with a gang of black foxes, and he assumes that there is a very high probability of concluding a deal. However, the location was unknown. Thus, he decided to ask Tang Mister if he had any idea how the bandits would act. Huang Chang, Huang Tong's eldest son, acts only at the behest of his father. Many times he has been spotted in the Twilight pub. The man can also send the guy a photo, and if he bumps into him, he will know that it is him. In order to continue his mission, the young man began to leave, because he had very little time. Some time later, events continued to occur nearby near the Twilight pub. While near the pub, the hero watched every client, and it was already 2 a.m. It even seemed to him that the enemies probably wouldn't show up today. But after some time, the bandits finally showed up, and by their appearance it was possible to determine that it was them. Before that, the hero made sure that this was really the same scoundrel. Now one could assume that he had waited for him, one of the 4 leaders of the gang of black foxes, namely the crazy tiger Huang Chang. One name already characterized him. Having started tracking the crazy tiger, Luo Feng wanted to understand where exactly he was going. Huang Chang had already made several circles around the city at low speed. Such caution was indeed very suspicious. But suddenly, the bandit decided that it was time to speed up and began to drive faster. After a long trip around the city, Mad Tiger finally found himself not far from some mansion. Getting out of the car, the tiger said that no one was watching them, because only after that he could enter the building. But they still did not know that the mystery was watching them, and surveillance was in fact being carried out. While observing, the main character decided to call Peng Wei to tell him something. It turned out that the young man decided to report to his old partner that there was a trade in kidnapped children in the Hua Yangchen area, and he should send reinforcements here to put an end to it. Luo Feng now knew that his enemies would end as they would be caught committing a crime.